A single chess piece decides the fate of humanity's survival, simply because every time it moves across the board, the world faces a devastating catastrophe. Little did anyone know this was all orchestrated by the gods that humans worship. Earth's cities were trapped inside chess pieces, forcing humanity into a board game. The gods act as players, rolling dice to determine the challenges and disasters. If humans succeed in the challenge, they survive to the next round, but fail just once, and the humans inside the chess piece will be instantly annihilated. The gods even kindly left behind a message. If you can represent the chess piece and reach the final square of the board, the world will return to its rightful path. But who knows if this so-called endpoint truly exists? Before this divine game began, Kui-Lai was just an ordinary college student. But on this day, a strange beam of light suddenly shot down onto the ground in front of him. The light beam instantly transformed into a transparent wall. After the blinding flash subsided, when he opened his eyes again, this wasn't the original world at all. He seemed to have been transported to another dimension or world. However, he wasn't the only one transported here. The next second, game-like system windows popped up in front of everyone, clearly stating that the game had begun and players should start rolling dice. At first, he thought the players referred to everyone present, but it was far more complex than he imagined. Suddenly, a girl beside him shouted for everyone to look up at the sky. In shocked gazes, a massive die fell from above their heads. The system then announced the dice showed 3, moving forward 3 spaces. Watching everything unfold below, he finally understood. He had been transported into a board game, not as a player, but as a game piece, designated as number 8. Who exactly were these so-called players? Why summon humans along, when they could have just summoned an empty city as game components? As he pondered this, the system announced again. The piece had landed on a defense square. Now setting task difficulty and time limit, players begin rolling dice. With the appearance of 1 and 3, this meant the difficulty was set to level 1, with a 3-day time limit. Simultaneously, another chess piece rose from the board and merged with theirs. While everyone was confused and panicked, the system announced the defense mission would begin. If the 4 strategic points marked on the map were breached, it would be considered mission failure, and all humans, including those in the chess piece, would be destroyed. Everyone cursed and refused, demanding whoever was behind this send them back immediately. But this was completely unrealistic. If they had actually consulted them, this option would have appeared long ago. The priority now was to closely monitor the pop-up information. The system announced it would provide basic equipment to everyone. Equipment strength would be determined by this 100-sided die. But before they could follow the instructions, hordes of monster armies appeared before them. They moved incredibly fast. Soon people were dying brutally under their savage attacks, and I was no exception. A beast man wielding a wooden club struck his skull. This also made him understand the cruel truth. Humans were kept in the chess pieces because they served as a protective force, and they had to protect the piece while advancing toward the game's endpoint. So who was manipulating this game behind the scenes? Gods or demons? Meanwhile, the Beastman saw Kui-Lai collapse motionless in the debris and paid him no more attention, turning to scan the surroundings, seemingly searching for the next target. Suddenly, a graceful figure descended from the sky. The next second, a blazing vortex erupted from the ground, engulfing all the surrounding beastmen in the whirlwind. In an instant, the scorching flames reduced several beastmen to ash. This finally calmed the panicked crowd. Everyone turned their gaze to this goddess-like warrior woman. The system window showed the woman's name was Gao Hui, but her weapon was incredible. A legendary spear forged from dragon fangs that could freely channel the power of flame dragons. Noticing everyone's attention, Gao Hui turned and instructed them to immediately take the wounded to South Mountain Tower. The army and police had already established a defensive line there. She also urged everyone to quickly roll their dice. With her reminder, everyone snapped back to reality. Driven by the desire to survive, this time no one hesitated and rolled their dice. Soon, based on everyone's different rolls, their dice transformed into various magical weapons. Armed with weapons, everyone's hearts no longer felt fearful. Following Gao Hui's battle cry, they charged at the beastmen. From this moment on, it meant we had lost our ordinary peaceful lives. Beginning this endless cruel game, on this day, countless ordinary people died in battle. Of course, countless heroes also emerged. Time passed, but the unconscious Kui-Lai still hadn't awakened. The die that had been in his grip mysteriously slipped from his palm at this moment, falling into the pop-up window and beginning to roll. When the die stopped wobbling, it miraculously landed on 100. The maximum value of 100. This meant Kui-Lai would receive a god-tier equipment. The next second, the die gathered into a book-like object in a dazzling light. The Book of Demon King Cressina, a mythical magical tome, allows access to Demon King Cressina's library, allows the user to view various information, such as item locations, hidden events, monster information, maps, and objectives at mission start. However, Demon King Cressina is the embodiment of monopolized desire in the demon realm. Therefore, all rewards survivors gain from this book will belong to the owner of Cressina's book. During the 3 hours Kui-Lai remained unconscious, the city's residents had already defended against the first wave of beastmen attacks, but at the terrible cost of nearly 10,000 casualties. Gao Hui, who had been fighting for hours, was also showing signs of exhaustion, but thanks to her protection, most residents in this district survived. Just as everyone was relaxing, a military heavy tower convoy roared in. A fully armed squad of soldiers jumped from the vehicles, assisting in transporting the wounded to South Mountain Base for treatment. Sergeant Quan Yong ran up to Gao Hui to make his report. Gao Hui timely asked about the base's situation, but since communications and networks were completely down, the temporary base the military and police established at South Mountain Tower could only use shortwave radio for communication, so they couldn't yet compile specific information from all areas. After speaking, the two planned to return to base to rest. Suddenly a cry came from behind them. Wait, this wave of beast tide isn't over yet. The Beastmen boss is about to arrive. This book has detailed records of everything. After speaking, Kui Lai worried they wouldn't believe him, opening the magic book and shoving it directly in front of them for them to see. Unexpectedly, this only made the situation awkward, because Gao Hui and Quan Yong saw only blank pages in the book, but given the current situation, they believed Kui Lai wouldn't joke about such things. If what Kui Lai said was true, then this book in his hands was like a cheat code. It was like everyone else was taking a closed book exam while this guy was copying from the answer sheet. So Quan Yong tentatively asked if Kui Lai could provide more information to verify the truthfulness of what the book described. Seeing this, Kui Lai said no more and flipped through the book. Immediately information about the strange helmet on Quan Yong's head appeared. Herdin helmet, hero class, allows the wearer to maintain firm resolve, never falling into states of confusion, fear, or bewilderment, part of the Herdin armor set. Then he revealed the attribute information of Gao Hui's Dragon Fang Spear. This guy Kui Lai even revealed her measurements, weight, hobbies, and other personal information, making Gao Hui blush and raise her spear, almost ready to strike. This revelation convinced both Gao Hui and Quan Yong completely, especially Gao Hui. It also made Quan Yong realize the urgency of the situation. He needed to immediately relay the intelligence back to base. Have the base prepare defensive deployments in advance. Soon Quan Yong contacted the base, but the base commander didn't dare take it lightly, since they knew nothing about beast tides. They needed Kui Lai to provide as much information and countermeasures as possible. Taking the radio, Kui Lai got straight to the point and shared the information he'd gained from the book. We're experiencing a defense mission that requires protecting 4 bases from beast tide destruction. Moreover, beast tides will launch attacks every 6 hours. Therefore, we must defend the bases 4 times a day. And at the end of each round of attacks, a boss will appear. This battle will continue for 3 days. The book also describes basic information about the boss. It's a 2-headed beast-man boss with difficulty level 1. Possessing both melee and magical attack capabilities. After Kui Lai concisely explained all the information, he then worked with the base commander to formulate a defense plan. Now they had confidence that more people could survive, and agreed that after this incident, Kui Lai would do his best to find a way to return to the original world. This made Gao Hui, who had been standing behind him, freeze for a moment. Instantly, Kui Lai's image grew taller in her mind. This man was impressive. Not only capable of planning for the present, but also thinking ahead to the future. After the plan was finalized, the base commander opened all frequencies for him, allowing him to issue defensive orders to the remaining 3 bases, as Kui Lai issued command after command. Little did he know he would soon be called the worst trash in history, because the demon god behind that book had already begun recording everything. He would monopolize all rewards from information sharers. To be precise, this included not only those who directly or indirectly heard information from Kui Lai, but also everyone who spread it through hearsay, rumors, etc. In short, all information originating from Kui Lai. Thus, countless names were quietly registered by the demon god. Meanwhile, with Kui Lai's help, when the Beastman boss appeared, Quan Yong followed Kui Lai's instructions, first using guns to interrupt the Beastman boss's magical skills, then letting Gao Hui, who had been waiting nearby, leap up, defeating the Beastman boss with just 1 strike, cutting it in half. Such a simple victory left Gao Hui, who had been prepared for a major battle, momentarily stunned. Until she saw Kui Lai giving her a thumbs up, she snapped back to reality, and also gave Kui Lai a thumbs up in return. Thus ended the first round of the Beast Tide attack. During this period, 190,000 people were registered under Demon King Cressina's ownership. Among these people, nearly 170,000 died in this Beast Tide. That meant 91% of people became sacrifices in this single day. From this day forward, Kui Lai began bearing this sin, and this guilt would accompany him until the moment this divine demonic game ended. Beastmen launch attacks against humanity's 4 bases every 6 hours. Kui Lai had lost count of how many times he'd commanded people in battle. Fortunately, he had the Book of Demon King Cressina, allowing him to devise simple and effective battle strategies based on beastmen characteristics. First, organize people to occupy high ground using long-range thermal weapons. Attack the beastman legions in batches and segments, with large-scale strikes. This was designed to scatter and divide the beastman legions. Then arrange those lucky enough to obtain advanced equipment, to ambush these divided beastman squads one by one. As time passed, all deployments proceeded methodically under Kui Lai's arrangements. This was all thanks to the book's power. It could update in real time all information about the current situation. Kui Lai only needed a thought, and it would immediately appear on the book's next page. So all his various deployments against beastman legions could achieve precision strikes accurate to the second. Therefore, gradually the military and police command also discovered this, opening the highest authority to him, allowing Kui Lai to directly issue command orders to the base. This greatly surprised Quan Yong, who had been quietly observing him. Was this guy Kui Lai a natural-born leader, or did this book give him such abilities? While Quan Yong was lost in thought, Kui Lai approached, instructing him to bring Gao Hui along for a trip outside the city, promising a surprise. Quan Yong looked at him with complete disbelief. Of course, Gao Hui had it worst. After several consecutive hard battles, she was already exhausted, but these two guys still carried her in her sleeping bag to the vehicle. So when Gao Hui opened her eyes again, she saw a massive monster in front of her and was immediately frightened, her hair standing on end. Kui Lai said mischievously, surprised, unexpected. Kuan Yong no longer wanted to deal with this fool, just kept throwing flash grenades to delay and disrupt the monster's attack rhythm. Fortunately, this monster moved slowly, so they managed to distance themselves after a few attempts. Kui Lai also timely revealed the monster's basic attributes. Giant Billy, a giant exiled by his tribe for lack of combat ability. Moves slowly, has no resistance to any elements. After hearing Kui Lai's explanation, Gao Hui was puzzled. Although this thing lacked combat power and moved slowly, its sturdy body and terrifying strength weren't something the three of them could handle. Speaking of this, Kui Lai corrected her. You're wrong. It's not the three of us. It's just you alone. At this moment, Gao Hui had only one thought. She'd chosen her friends poorly and wanted to split these two fools first. But who told her she'd drawn a legendary offensive weapon? She had no choice but to reluctantly summon her Dragon Fang spear. Kui Lai, quickly tell me what to do. Honestly, with Gao Hui's current strength, she had no chance against this giant. But Kui Lai already had a plan. Hero class and above weapons all had hidden skills, but certain conditions had to be met to activate the skill. Then Kui Lai, under their shocked gazes, revealed the conditions for activating the Dragon Fang Spear's hidden skill. The scene shifted. Gao Hui spoke again with a worried expression. Kui Lai, maybe you should check the book again to confirm. I still feel this is unreliable. Trust me. Trust this book. It'll definitely work. However, there was no time to hesitate. Gao Wei steeled herself and chose to trust Kui Lai, immediately raising the Dragon Fang Spear and thrusting it hard into her own abdomen. At the same time, the giant's arm came crashing down. Seeing this scene, Kuan Yong's heart trembled, but the next second, the giant's form lit up with red light. Then, an explosive sound suddenly rang out. A majestic dragon's roar followed, and terrifying dragon breath instantly lifted the giant's body. A dazzling fire dragon phantom even appeared in the sky. The hidden skill within the Dragon Fang Spear was successfully activated. What followed was earth-shaking explosive dragon flames. Its power was terrifying, like detonating a small missile. Kuan Yong watched in stunned amazement. Too terrifying, too dangerous. Thank goodness this skill wasn't used in the city, but soon he corrected himself, realizing that Kui Lai, who possessed the magic book, seemed more dangerous and terrifying, because this book contained too much dangerous information. If this guy Kui Lai had any evil intentions, the consequences would be unimaginable. But now it seemed fortunate that the magic book was in the hands of someone like him. At this moment, the three had returned to the city, and a pop-up appeared with a notification. The 3-day defense mission was complete. The system would then distribute rewards based on contributions. This news immediately made all surviving citizens cheer with joy. Of course, people were more curious about what rewards the system would distribute. Soon, another pop-up notification appeared. The point exchange function was now open, allowing points to be exchanged for healing, experience points, skills, equipment, weapons, and other operations. In the system, citizens only needed 10 points to heal all injuries, even regenerate severed limbs. Seeing this, doctors immediately suggested everyone choose the healing option first. This was also the option all people most desperately wanted, but when everyone hopefully opened their point pages, they were all stunned, unable to believe their eyes, because the pop-up clearly displayed, due to sacrifice ownership influence, all rewards have been taken, your earned points are 0. This result left everyone at a loss, not understanding what the sacrifice ownership displayed on the interface meant. They only knew that the points they'd fought desperately for had been taken by someone. Kui Lai was also bewildered. He didn't know how this had happened, but he could confirm one thing. His pop-up interface was different from everyone else's. What appeared before him was the sacrifice ownership window. Sacrifice 10% of citizens for double rewards, sacrifice 20% of citizens for triple rewards, and so on. While he was confused and at a loss, everyone else's pop-ups showed a message. The following are those who earned the most points in this mission. 3rd place Xu En, 312 points. 2nd place Jiang Shengyuan, 1,402 points. When they saw the 1st place name, Kui Lai was stunned, his face full of disbelief. Kui Lai, 1st place, 9.968 billion points. Everyone stared at this information in shock, but when they came to their senses, their previously surprised expressions turned extremely grim. They all rushed to Kui Lai demanding an explanation, questioning why he took most of the points and what this sacrifice ownership was about. Facing everyone's questions, Kui Lai desperately tried to defend himself. Kuan Yang, who had been protecting him, suggested he calm down and try to see if he could share or distribute points to everyone through trading. But after Kui Lai's attempts, he was prompted by the window that due to the Demon King's monopolistic desire, sharing or gifting points to others was refused. This was even a passive skill. Kui Lai refused to give up. He planned to purchase items and then share them with others. But unsurprisingly, he was again prompted by the system. Sharing or gifting items to others is prohibited. This immediately made Kui Lai lose emotional control, throwing the magic book hard to the ground. Unexpectedly, the magic book extended several tentacles and flew back to his side, making him instantly collapse and curse, his heart filled with guilt. At this moment, a man's plea came from the crowd. 10 points, please just give me 10 points. But the next second, the man let out a heart-wrenching wail. His wife had died from severe injuries, unable to hold on. Such agonizing wails echoed throughout the city. accompanied by hatred and curses toward Kui Lai. The death toll immediately skyrocketed, yet Kui Lai still wouldn't give up, frantically flipping through the book trying to find a solution. Suddenly a gun barrel appeared behind him, pressed against his head. Then came an angry roar. Kui Lai, enough! Return the points to everyone immediately. While Kui Lai panicked, not knowing what to do, Quan Yang said in a barely audible voice behind him, "Run quickly!" Leaving and then finding a way to solve everything was the only option now. Indeed, his words were like a shot of adrenaline, giving Kui Lai's heart instant resolve. He immediately opened the point window and exchanged 30 points for agility attributes. The next second, his form vanished like a ghost. This scene infuriated the citizens trying to settle accounts with him. But sudden system notifications diverted the citizens' attention again. The system pop-up announced the next mission would begin in 24 hours. This immediately shocked the citizens. There was another mission, and with such a short interval. With no time to think, everyone followed the military and police, moving the wounded toward the base. In an abandoned building, Kui Lai was writing and calculating, seemingly computing something significant. Meanwhile, the military and police were making corresponding deployments. Gao Hui was also actively preparing for battle. When the sun rose the next day, the massive die outside the barrier also fell, showing the number 4 face up, with a thunderous roar. The entire city suddenly moved forward 4 steps. A system pop-up followed. The city has reached the Demon King's sealed space. While breaking the demon pillars that maintain the seal, kill the guardians and destroy all demon pillars within 5 days. Then the die began rolling again, showing the number 3, meaning there were only 3 demon pillars. With several more rolls of the die, it revealed demon pillars guarded by fallen angels, and demon pillars guarded by giant spiders. Fortunately, both guardians were only difficulty level 1, but this seemed to exhaust everyone's luck. The third demon pillar rolled a 3. The guardian was a goblin swordsman whose martial arts had reached perfection. After everything was revealed, the military police base immediately issued combat orders. But soon the feedback showed the battle situation was not optimistic. Quan Yang immediately ordered someone to notify Gao Hui. The message he received was that Gao Hui had already departed. At this moment, he somewhat missed the times when the 3 of them were together. The scene shifted. Gao Hui had already reached one of the demon pillars, and it was the one guarded by the level 3 goblin swordsman. Without unnecessary words, Gao Hui, surrounded by swirling flames, raised her spear and charged at the goblin. Unexpectedly, this seemingly powerful strike barely made the goblin look up. He simply thrust his long sword forward, stopping the Dragon Fang spear from advancing even half an inch. Then with a light twist of his wrist, Gao Hui's body was swept up like a fallen leaf in a gale, thrown several meters. Then the goblin casually raised his sword and slashed. But the strike carried divine punishment-like power, charging toward Gao Hui's face with sharp killing intent. But just then, the originally calm goblin suddenly showed sharp focus, with a figure landing not far away. It was Kui Lai, and fortunately his appearance saved Gao Hui. Kui Lai's arrival delighted Gao Hui. Did this mean he'd found a way to return the points? However, she received an answer that left her dumbfounded. This guy actually planned to spend all his points on himself and asked Gao Hui to relay a message. "If you don't want your points stolen, I suggest citizens don't appear in front of me." After saying this, he ignored Gao Hui's questions and left gracefully. After all, he now had billions of points in his account. He needed to find a secluded place for a good shopping spree. Reaching the location, he immediately summoned the system pop-up, showing his personal attributes. The show was about to begin. The next second, everyone in the city received a series of system notifications. Kui Lai became the first person in the city to reach 100% endurance. Kui Lai became the first person in the city to reach 100% intelligence. These operations infuriated everyone, yet they were helpless against him. Of course, this was far from over. He then frantically drew weapons from the equipment section, spending his billions of points until only a few 100,000 remained. Total harvest: 142 pieces of various legendary equipment, and 1,023 pieces of hero class equipment. He now radiated the aura of a whale, every piece of equipment legendary class. His appearance instantly ignited the goblin swordsman's fighting spirit, but this guy again didn't play by the rules. "Sorry, I don't have time to play with you right now." Then he crouched down and pushed off hard, disappearing without a trace. This move completely baffled Gao Hui. But stranger still, when the goblin swordsman saw him leave, he didn't seem to mind, just pressed his hat brim and continued sleeping. Immediately an idea arose in Gao Hui's mind. Could it be that guardians only attack those who actively assault them? Indeed, as Gao Hui suspected, and naturally Kui Lai definitely knew this, so he chose to save the hardest bone to crack for last. Meanwhile, Kui Lai, wearing his legendary Jordans, ran along walls and rooftops, soon arriving at another demon pillar. His appearance immediately caught the fallen angel's attention, but his speed was too fast. The fallen angel had just turned around when Kui Lai kicked him down, but the fallen angel was no pushover either. Kui Lai flipped to get behind him, then his sword slashed down accordingly. But the fallen angel retreated to avoid it. In just a few breaths, the two had exchanged dozens of moves in midair, fighting evenly. After finding an opening, Kui Lai decisively swung his blade, severing the fallen angel's wings. Suddenly losing his wings, the angel seemed to lose his ability to fly, plummeting downward. Seeing this, Kui Lai unhesitatingly dove toward where he was falling, but this time his target seemed to be the halo on the angel's head. For a moment, the two continued fighting dozens more rounds in the air, nearly hitting a military truck in the process. When the barely surviving Quan Yang crawled out of the wreckage, he immediately ordered everyone to retreat 500 meters and stand by. Obviously, after the last incident, the military had developed some countermeasures for Kui Lai's abilities, including isolating anyone who heard Kui Lai speak until the mission ended. But clearly his order came too late, because Kui Lai had already defeated the fallen angel, and landed not far in front of them. Obviously, Kui Lai noticed them but ignored them, instead focusing on his pop-up window, thinking that with both angel wings and the angel's halo obtained, the trigger conditions should be met. Quan Yang on the side, perhaps seeing that Kui Lai had no intention of acknowledging them, actually approached and asked, "You defeated the Pillar Guardian?" Kui Lai didn't speak, just looked at him and nodded. The next instant he leaped up and disappeared from the spot. However, Kui Lai's behavior improved Quan Yong's impression of him somewhat, understanding it as Kui Lai worrying that sacrifice ownership would target them, so he remained silent and left directly. Little did he know this was a big trap Kui Lai had deliberately set for him. While Quan Yang was lost in his thoughts, a soldier behind him reminded him with horror, "Captain, look!" The fallen angel, who had just been like a dead dog, suddenly came back to life. His body was also undergoing some kind of eerie transformation. His aura was rapidly climbing. With a roar that shook heaven and earth, the fallen angel evolved into a corrupt giant beast with a grotesque face, its difficulty level jumping from 1 to 2. Seeing this, Quan Yang immediately realized Kui Lai had set them up. Without time to curse, he immediately turned and ordered his teammate to request support from the base, while issuing the order to open fire on the squad. Instantly, several grenades hit the corrupt giant beast, but it was completely unfazed. It suddenly leaped up. With terrifying force, it swiped a claw at them, immediately sending them flying and scrambling for cover. What support? Right now, they'd rather grow 2 extra legs to run as far away as possible. Thanks to the protection of his legendary Helding helmet, Quan Yang wasn't consumed by fear and remained calm. Out of the 7-person team, only he maintained a fighting retreat, but his actions had already enraged the corrupted beast. The creature suddenly leaped up and pounced at him. Quan Yang seemed to sense death approaching. He glanced back. In that split second, he was struck down by massive claws, blood instantly spurting through the gaps. The spot where Quan Yang had just stood was now soaked with a pool of crimson blood. Kui Lai, who had returned, saw this scene, and was genuinely delighted like a child. Finally got rid of one troublemaker. However, an unexpected turn occurred suddenly. A ghostly green light blazed from the corrupted beast's claw tips. Then an explosion instantly blew the massive claw away. A system notification popped up. The Helding helmet had met the conditions to activate its hidden skill. A phantom church banner was raised high, and Quan Yang sat covered in blood at his original position. In an instant, a brilliant apparition descended behind Quan Yang. He was possessed by the ghost of heretic Judge Helding, temporarily granting divine properties to all his equipment and skills. Defense against dark and corruption elements was enhanced. Attack power increased, healing ability boosted, but the changes didn't stop there. The warriors under Quan Yang's command all transformed as well, mysterious badges glowing green on their foreheads. Their eyes revealed an intensely fanatical madness. In this moment, they became irrational extremist guardians. They would attack all dark and corrupted creatures without regard for their own safety. This scene made Kui Lai, hiding nearby and watching the show, shudder with fear. But this group of green glowing fanatics wielded their divinely empowered rifle butts, combined with skilled divine bayonet techniques. Under Quan Yang's leadership, they brutally killed the terrifying corrupted beast. Of course, Kui Lai, as the mastermind behind all this, was quite satisfied with his scheming, because his mindset had changed. He was no longer simply focused on completing tasks, but rather on designing the methods to complete them. Like this scheme targeting Quan Yang, he first severed the fallen angel's wings and halo, triggering the conditions needed for the fallen angel to evolve into a corrupted beast, then used Quan Yang to eliminate the corrupted beast, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Not only indirectly teaching Quan Yang how to activate his helmet, but also eliminating a guardian of the demon pillars. Next, Kui Lai set his sights on the guardian of another demon pillar. Under the goblin swordsman's bewildered gaze, he casually sat cross-legged and began speaking. "I know you're trying to break the Demon King's seal to challenge him in pursuit of martial perfection. How about we make a bet? If I win, I'll help you break the Demon King's seal." These words instantly changed the goblin swordsman's expression dramatically. The scene shifted. At this moment, Gao Hui was fighting alone against a large group of anti-human robots. She'd been battling continuously for several hours. But these robots were like spring leaks. One batch after another, no matter how many she killed, they kept coming. What was even more infuriating was that these robots kept evolving, each batch more powerful than the last. Gao Hui knew she couldn't let the robots continue evolving. She had to use her hidden ultimate move to end the situation before things got worse. But to avoid friendly fire, she had to clear the area first. However, no matter how much she shouted, the surrounding citizens refused to retreat, because almost all their families had wounded members, waiting for them to earn points by killing monsters to save them. At this moment, 2 stubborn guys had quietly circled behind the giant spider, planning something big. They were trying to kill the giant spider with 2 magic crossbows in their hands, but the giant spider discovered them first. The moment the giant spider turned around, it fired a scorching beam. Just as the 2 were about to face death, a slender figure suddenly appeared. Blocking in front of them, she used her dragon fang spear to break through the beam's attack, but was still engulfed by the violent explosion. When the smoke cleared, all 3 were still alive, but Gao Hui, now covered in wounds, could no longer contain her anger. She immediately turned and sternly ordered the two to leave. This finally snapped the two frightened fools back to reality, and they immediately fled crying and screaming. This contrasting scene made Gao Hui burst into laughter. However, Gao Hui didn't know the giant spider was conducting data analysis on her from behind. Instantly, all of Gao Hui's data was analyzed and displayed. Then the giant spider's abdomen lit up with brilliant light. A robot designed specifically to counter Gao Hui was being created. This scene made Gao Hui realize something was wrong. But just as she was about to intervene, all the surrounding robots suddenly rushed at her as if receiving orders. Are they all targeting me? Perfect. Then I'll take out all you broken machines in one go. In an instant, a terrifying flame suddenly erupted. The surrounding robots were instantly incinerated by the flames, but Gao Hui wasn't done. She gathered all her energy into the Dragon Fang Spear and shouted, "Everyone get away now!" Then she hurled the spear with all her might. The Dragon Fang Spear traced a beautiful arc toward the demon pillar. The next second, an earth-shaking explosion echoed across the land. The terrifying shockwave sent the citizens tumbling. Seeing this, Gao Hui couldn't help but smile with victory. But then something unexpected happened. A red protective shield suddenly appeared, and the demon pillar inside remained completely unharmed. A four-winged figure was slowly rising into the air. It was the mech created specifically to counter Gao Hui, with excellent fire resistance, equipped with Dragon Slayer weapons that would deal extra damage to Gao Hui, and could automatically detect and track her movements. Every attribute perfectly countered Gao Hui. Seeing this, Gao Hui was completely stunned. In that moment of shock, the anti-Gao Hui mech had already flashed behind her. Lightning fast, Gao Hui immediately raised her spear to block, but still couldn't withstand this terrifyingly powerful strike. Her body was instantly sent flying dozens of meters, and the Dragon Fang Spear was knocked from her hands. A wave of helpless dizziness flooded her head, but just as her eyes were about to close, she saw a familiar figure leaping down from the air. With a swift strike, the giant spider's head was severed, then dragging the head with one hand while seemingly operating a pop-up with the other. Just as Gao Hui's vision was about to blur, she saw Kui Lai's figure leap up and disappear. Meanwhile, the mechs searching for Gao Hui following the battle traces only found a pool of crimson blood on the ground. Target Gao Hui missing, initiating search mode. On the other side, the decapitated giant spider didn't die, but triggered the conditions to unlock a special trait. It evolved into a frenzied spider, doubling the speed at which it produced robots. Production capacity also doubled, and it wouldn't stop until the main device was destroyed. However, facing the suddenly increased number of robots, the citizens still fought desperately without retreating. But losing Gao Hui's military assistance caused citizen casualties to skyrocket. Just when their defense line was about to collapse, several trucks rushed into the battlefield. When the doors opened, and they saw who had arrived, tears streamed uncontrollably from the citizens' eyes. Their reinforcements had finally arrived. The stern-faced Quan Yang jumped down with his 5-man reconnaissance squad. Standing on a tall building, Kui Lai quietly watched the scene, his thoughts drifting far away. Gao Hui, unconscious for who knows how long, finally slowly awakened. Realizing she was still alive and recalling the scene before she fainted, she knew Kui Lai had saved her. But as she got up, she met the goblin swordsman's arrogant expression and was immediately frightened out of her wits. But her reaction made the goblin swordsman's expression freeze, and he told her to be quiet. Hearing this, Gao Hui instinctively looked embarrassed and was about to explain when she suddenly realized something. "You can actually speak." But the goblin swordsman didn't want to continue this topic. "Your injuries have been healed by me. Also, according to my agreement with Kui Lai, I will now guide your martial arts." He then raised his scabbard, pointing at Gao Hui. This was too much information for Gao Hui to process at once, but she had already experienced the goblin swordsman's prowess. She couldn't even properly handle a single move from him. Thinking of this, she no longer hesitated and immediately summoned her Dragon Fang Spear. Her form shot forward like an arrow toward the goblin swordsman. However, facing Gao Hui's fierce attack, the goblin swordsman remained calm. His movements were like a leisurely stroll as he dodged and weaved, making each of Gao Hui's strikes miss completely. Of course, during their sparring, the goblin was dutifully pointing out the flaws and deficiencies in Gao Hui's martial techniques. "Gao Hui, your biggest problem is over-relying on energy borrowed from the fire dragon. Because you're borrowing too much energy, you're being dominated by this power instead, unable to freely use your learned martial techniques. To control this energy properly, you must keep it within the range you can handle." After hearing the goblin swordsman's correction, Gao Hui seemed to understand. And with a thought, the flames that had been swirling around her instantly converged, but their power was even greater than before. After a while, Gao Hui had been thoroughly trained and was sitting on the ground, undignifiedly. It was then that the goblin swordsman asked his burning question. "Are you willing to let me teach you because you trust Kui Lai, or because you want to become stronger?" Faced with this question, Gao Hui didn't have a definite answer. Because ever since she was dragged into this demon god game, she spent every day fighting monsters. She simply didn't have extra time to think. But having practiced martial arts for many years, she knew that to stand tall and survive, she had to train harder than others. After saying this, Gao Hui sincerely bowed to the goblin swordsman, expressing her gratitude. Seeing this, the goblin swordsman's doubts were dispelled. He had originally thought Kui Lai was using this girl. Now it seemed Gao Hui was a martial artist who could carve out her own path in the martial world. Time quickly passed. 2 days. The mech created specifically to counter Gao Hui had already destroyed and suspected Gao Hui targets through tracking. Upon discovering another target, it instantly accelerated and rushed into some ruins. However, its powerful strike was lightly blocked by a small human arm. "Idiot! You've been fooled again!" Kuilai looked mockingly at the mech still holding the giant spider's head. For the past few days, Kuilai had been using the confusing signal from this spider head to continuously toy with this mech and prevent it from tracking the real Gao Hui. Actually, destroying this mech wouldn't be difficult for him, but he decided to leave it for Gao Hui to handle personally. After all, this mech was specifically created by the giant spider to kill Gao Hui. Of course, he also found ways to make the best use of everything. For instance, using the beams fired by this mech to severely damage one of the demon pillars, greatly accelerating the citizens' progress in destroying the demon pillars. Because after understanding the plundering properties of the Krasina book, he positioned himself as support. All plans targeting monsters and missions would no longer involve direct action, but rather use indirect strategies and guidance to have others take action. The purpose was to let more people gain points from completed tasks, then use those points to exchange for weapons or items from the shop, thereby improving the overall strength of the entire city. Time quickly passed. Another day. In a subway station somewhere in the city, many citizens were gathered there resting. Suddenly, a loud crash rang out as a figure smashed through the ceiling and flew in. It was the mech specifically designed to counter Gao Hui. Recalibrating signal. Target found, beginning destruction. In a barrage of explosions, the sound of glass breaking could be heard. Target eliminated, destruction complete. Yes, this time it really did eliminate a target, but the target was a steaming bowl of tofu pudding on the ground. After the mech saw what it had actually destroyed, it nearly fried its CPU. Just as the mech was still trying to identify the puddle of tofu pudding on the ground, a flame-wrapped figure charged into the subway station. The newcomer's appearance immediately caused the citizens to exclaim, "Who is that? Could it be a magical girl warrior?" At this moment, Gao Hui looked solemn, and her equipment reeked of money. Her complete Phantom Hero armor set not only greatly improved her defense, but also enhanced her control over fire elements. When the mech sensed something was wrong, Gao Hui had already launched her attack. The slow-reacting mech tried to strike back, but it was too late. It was sent flying by the spear. However, the massive impact force from this strike required the mech to embed its fingers into the ground to barely stabilize itself. But then the thrusters on the mech's back ignited. Instantly, the mech charged at Gao Hui with a thunderous sonic boom. Seeing this, Gao Hui didn't dodge but instead braced her spear with both hands, planning to meet it head-on. In an instant, with a violent explosion, the subway station's ceiling was blown away. The battle between the two reached its conclusion. At this moment, Gao Hui's Dragon Fang spear had pierced through the mech's body, and she lifted it high into the air. Meanwhile, Kuilai and the goblin swordsman had been watching this battle from start to finish. The goblin was quite satisfied with his student, a hint of pride creeping into his expression. Seeing this, Kuilai couldn't help but tease, "How do you happen to have a set of women's equipment? Do you have that kind of hobby?" But the goblin seemed unable to hear the mischief in Kuilai's words, or perhaps he simply didn't want to engage with this topic. "According to our previous bet, now that my student has won, I've kept my promise as agreed. You must also honor yours." Hearing this, Kuilai glanced at the Demon King's seal hanging in midair. "Alright, it's almost time for me to make my entrance." On the other side, after eliminating the mech, Gao Hui immediately brought people to rendezvous with Quan Yang. They quickly destroyed the 2 demon pillars previously guarded by the fallen angel and giant spider. At that moment, the citizens' confidence was greatly boosted, believing they could complete the mission without Kuilai's help. Little did they know this victory was actually the result of Kuilai's series of arrangements. The scene shifted. After just a brief rest at the base, Gao Hui found Quan Yang, planning to destroy the 3rd demon pillar together. At this point, Quan Yang had learned from Gao Hui about the goblin swordsman teaching her martial arts. But what surprised him was that Kuilai had secretly orchestrated it. Even so, Quan Yang was still worried. After all, he had barely managed to defeat a level 1 corrupted beast at the cost of his life. But the goblin swordsman was a level 3 monster, and now he had a master-student relationship with Gao Hui. If he lost Gao Hui's help, could he win alone? He really wanted to know what Kuilai was thinking. Just as Quan Yang was still pondering, his ears suddenly heard thunderous sounds. Looking toward the sound, he saw a figure attacking the Demon King's seal in the sky. Without even thinking, he knew. Only that madman Kuilai had the strength to do such a thing. Soon, with Kuilai's continuous attacks, the seal finally couldn't withstand it and shattered. But just as everyone wondered why Kuilai would do this, something unexpected happened. Several streams of black torrents burst from within the seal. Looking closely, they were countless bird-like creatures. At this moment, everyone received a pop-up notification. Due to the Demon King's seal being broken, this mission has changed to killing the Demon King. If the mission fails, all participants will be eliminated by the game. This news immediately caused all citizens to erupt in anger. The mission they were about to complete had been ruined by that bastard Kuilai. Moreover, there were less than 24 hours left until the 5-day mission deadline. But what made them most desperate was the increased difficulty. This Kill the Demon King mission was obviously several times harder than the original. Now even Gao Hui and Quan Yang, who knew some inside information, were shocked by Kuilai's actions. However, One person looked at the scene before him, with excited, fanatical battle intent. The goblin swordsman's form leaped up the moment he drew his sword. His figure flashed and weaved through the bird flock. Each swing of his blade brought down a large swath of birdmen with his sword energy. During this, the goblin swordsman even called out toward Gao Hui's location. Gao Hui, this is your master's gift and assignment to you. I hope you'll give it your all. Meanwhile, Kui Lai used the fallen angel's halo to safely break into the demon cave within the seal. As he went deeper, he soon found his target in the cave. Demon King Batu, level 6, enjoys tearing opponents apart with bare hands, can absorb opponents' flesh and blood to strengthen his fists. Clearly, Kui Lai's sudden appearance disrupted Batu's dining pleasure. The moment Kui Lai turned around, Batu swung his fist down. Kui Lai seemed to sense it, instinctively turning and retreating, making Batu's sneak attack miss. Though he got splattered with blood and flesh from Batu's fist, "Don't rush, your opponent will be here soon." Sure enough, as his words fell, the goblin swordsman's figure appeared. The moment the goblin swordsman saw the Demon King, he was actually intimidated by the Demon King's brutal aura. Kui Lai couldn't let his long-planned scheme fail at this crucial moment. He had no choice but to personally step up as a punching bag for the Demon King, planning to use this to inspire the goblin swordsman's fighting spirit or guilt. In just a few breaths, under the Demon King's frenzied pummeling, he almost comfortably fell asleep. This was all thanks to Kui Lai's legendary jacket that not only added defense but also auto-healed. At this point, the goblin swordsman who had been watching finally felt moved. The fighting spirit in his chest was rapidly climbing. Finally, when the Demon King was about to give Kui Lai a second round of pummeling, he flashed forward with his sword to protect Kui Lai. "Step back, bro's about to start showing off. Just watch as I avenge you right away. If we get a chance to meet in another world, we'll definitely drink together." After hearing the goblin's words, Kui Lai instantly understood the goblin was going with a death wish. This made Kui Lai's heart suddenly clench, and thinking of how he had schemed against him, a wave of guilt immediately surged into his heart. He quickly called out to stop the goblin, but the goblin's form had already leaped out. He was already fighting the Demon King at close range, exchanging dozens of moves, leaving only the secretly ashamed Kui Lai behind. But then the Krasina book mysteriously began glowing red. The next second, a system pop-up appeared. Friendship with Goblin Swordsman has reached maximum level, successfully activating Krasina's hidden skill. This sudden change immediately piqued Kui Lai's interest. After learning more, Kui Lai was overjoyed, but in this brief moment, the Goblin Swordsman was already sitting against rubble, covered in blood and breathing heavily. He had fought this battle with satisfaction, but ultimately the power gap with the Demon King was too great. The only way to end this battle was to release his ultimate move, but that would endanger his life. But if the Demon King didn't die, both his dear friend and beloved student would be killed by the Demon King. With this thought, the Goblin Swordsman immediately made his decision. But then something unexpected happened. The Demon King's body was suddenly cut in half before his eyes. His pupils contracted in shock as he stared at Kui Lai. But wasn't Kui Lai's plan to wait until both sides were exhausted before reaping the benefits? Why did he strike early again? After the smoke cleared, the goblin also recovered from his shock, glaring with gritted teeth at the awkwardly smiling Kui Lai. Just as he was about to speak, the Krasina book suddenly floated before him, flashing with eerie red light. Hidden skill activated. Can sign a soul contract with one creature with maximum friendship or fear attribute. Can sign up to 4 soul contracts. Before the Goblin Swordsman could react, his form disappeared in the red glow, transformed into a card page within the Krasina book. This must be why Kui Lai didn't let the Goblin Swordsman perish together with the Demon King at the last moment. Gaining a new subordinate made Kui Lai quite pleased, not caring at all about his rapidly falling body. At this moment, the system notification sounded, Demon King Batu eliminated. Highest contributor Kui Lai, mission complete. All summoned monsters cleared. The top 3 on the mission points leaderboard were quickly tallied and displayed. Gao Hui and Quan Yang ranked 2nd and 3rd respectively with around 3,000 points each, while Kui Lai topped the list with 220,000 points. Sure enough, Kui Lai's domination of the leaderboard again caused citizens to erupt in anger. So everyone was broke because this kid Kui Lai was pulling tricks behind the scenes. What they didn't know was that Kui Lai broke the Demon King's seal and released those birdmen who could only fly but had no real combat power, just to give ordinary citizens a chance to farm points. Otherwise, most ordinary citizens would have no opportunity to earn points at all. At the same time, someone on the ground was silently watching Kui Lai, deep in thought. A large hand was slowly playing with a golden die, looking with great interest at Kui Lai's attribute panel. That's right, this anomalous existence called Kui Lai had been discovered by the system. The pop-up already clearly listed the ways to deal with Kui Lai. The large hand in the air hesitated only briefly, then unhesitatingly clicked on the option representing annihilation. Instantly, an invisible, overwhelming killing intent struck toward Kui Lai. But strangely, this inexplicable heart palpitation suddenly and abruptly dissipated. Although the deadly threat was gone, there arose a strange feeling of being watched all over. Meanwhile, the large hand above the city paused, then frantically clicked through a bunch of pop-ups, appearing very agitated, because no matter how it operated, it couldn't annihilate this anomalous unit called Kui Lai. With no choice, it could only pull up all of Kui Lai's personal information, only to be surprised to find that Kui Lai was actually a hidden unit, which prevented the game system from selecting him for annihilation. After some consideration, it could only choose to ignore him and continue the game. Strange. Probably even Kui Lai himself didn't know he had become a transcendent existence. The scene returned to the city. Because of Kui Lai's elaborate scheme, most citizens gained considerable points from this mission. With points in hand, citizens used them for healing, and naturally spent remaining points on drawing various equipment. After all, the more points spent, the higher the chance of getting high-level equipment. So knowledge about how to use various dice became essential for citizens to master. Soon someone shared summarized information through this hero-level messenger horn to all citizens. But citizens quickly discovered this game system was quite predatory. The items they got after spending large amounts of points were all unsatisfactory. Take Quan Yong, for example. His luck was as good as always. He rolled once and got another hero-level item, but it was a spoon with very peculiar properties. A spoon that would always stay clean and instantly return to its owner even if lost. This really made Quan Yong want to cry. But fortunately, these items weren't bound, and many citizens had already begun spontaneous exchanges and trades. At the same time, many clever citizens had started forming factions and creating fixed combat squads. It seemed everyone was gradually adapting to this unrealistic world. However, what saddened Quan Yong most was Gao Hui's departure. She left to help more ordinary citizens while also seeking opportunities for martial arts breakthroughs. Of course, she promised to come out and help during missions. Soon, in just half a day, the points citizens spent boosted the entire city's experience to level 1, causing the system to repair some of the city's basic infrastructure, greatly improving citizens' living conditions. The system also got upgraded, allowing free adjustment of pop-up window sizes and enabling friend adding and communication functions through the system. However, when Kui Lai saw this series of system information, he felt terrible, because he was someone who had spent a full 9.9 billion points. Why weren't those points counted toward the city's experience? While pondering, he looked at the book beside him and immediately had an answer. Who else but Demon King Christina could be causing trouble behind the scenes? If so, should he continue using this book? Just as Kui Lai was feeling lost and melancholy, a graceful figure suddenly appeared behind him. Kui Lai turned to face the beauty and greeted her in a generous, friendly manner. This surprised Kui Lai as he hurriedly flipped through the magic book. Name: Zhang Yan, level 5, ordinary citizen, with no additional information. Just as Kui Lai was puzzled by this, Zhang Yan actually leaned forward. With flashing green eyes, she looked deeply at Kui Lai. It seems you've gotten used to this loneliness. So you came to laugh at me, or do you have some agenda? But Zhang Yan had no intention of continuing this conversation. I'm just curious about what that idiot looks like. The one who clearly has the power to rule this city, yet chooses the most difficult way to do everything. Don't be surprised why you can't find much information about me in the magic book. Her words made Kui Lai suddenly alarmed. You came to find me just for this? Alright, I've seen the person I wanted to see. I'll come find you again. Without waiting for Kui Lai's response, she grabbed a rope and walked straight to the tower's edge, leaping without hesitation. This scene immediately startled Kui Lai, because he knew this place was at least 500 meters above ground, but when he reached the edge and looked down, there was no sign of Zhang Yan, only a rope swaying in the wind. The next morning, system notification sounds echoed throughout the city. You have entered the Golden Deity's trap space. Golden Deity level 2. Within the limited 2-week time frame, collect enough treasure from 4 maps to satisfy the Golden Deity. This announcement sparked citywide discussion, with most citizens relieved that no monsters would be summoned into the city this time. And it seemed that as long as someone found treasure satisfactory to the Golden Deity in the maps, everyone could share in the collective rewards. However, the next system pop-up shattered this beautiful vision. It specified that there would be no collective rewards this time, and individual rewards would depend entirely on how much satisfaction one could bring to the Golden Deity. In other words, you get what you work for. No work means no reward. This information made Gao Hui frown deeply after reading it, because she knew there were many powerless elderly, children, and disabled people in the city. She immediately redirected energy to her feet. She needed to find high ground first to survey the entire map. After all, protecting the city's safety was her mission. Meanwhile, Kui Lai was also beginning to plan for this mission. After thorough analysis, a rough plan had formed in his mind. If successful this time, he was confident he could raise this city's level by another tier, of course, to ensure the points spent would contribute to the city's level upgrade. He first had to figure out how to prevent the magic book from intercepting them. Just as he was pondering, ripples suddenly appeared on the book's pages, followed by a sharp sword blade thrusting out violently. Kui Lai had no time to react and was instantly pierced by the blade. A sensation of impending death suddenly spread throughout his body, but the bizarre happened again. He was once again completely unharmed. Just as he was still savoring the illusion of death, his heart suddenly tightened, accompanied by bone-deep, excruciating pain throughout his body. Kui Lai probably never expected the magic book would stab him at this moment. At the same time, a system pop-up appeared before him. Due to 0 sacrifice ownership in the last mission, you are receiving condemnation from Demon King Christina. Your HP will continuously decrease. If you don't make new sacrifice ownership before your HP reaches 0, you will die. At that time, the Book of Christina will also leave to find its next master. Gao Hui, transformed into a human King Kong Barbie, could single-handedly eliminate a rock troll with one strike. But she never expected that the treasure she worked so hard to obtain by killing monsters would be brazenly taken by someone who got there first. She then scolded irritably. Zhang Yan, can't you be more professional? Everyone says kill and steal, you should at least kill me first. This blatant robbery makes me look bad. Jiang Yan remained as shameless as ever. It's all just junk anyway. Come on, sis, we'll take you to find the good stuff. Hearing this, Gao Hui wore an expression that clearly said, I'd be crazy to believe you. Gao Hui had grown accustomed to Jiang Yan's shameless behavior. Who else would have the nerve to strike up a friendship over half a potato chip they'd already bitten? Now she was following her around like a stubborn plaster for a whole day. But aside from being shameless, Jiang Yan didn't seem to have any malicious intent. Gao Hui had no choice but to let her tag along, considering it teaming up for wilderness hunting. After their banter, Gao Hui shared the treasure coordinates with the citizens through the system. Seeing Gao Hui's selfless act, Jiang Yan couldn't help but look stunned. She couldn't help saying, you really are adorably naive, thinking this is just an ordinary personal treasure hunt. Then she looked at the stupidity revealed in Gao Hui's bewildered eyes. She genuinely liked this simple fool, so she patiently explained, this is a personal battle with no collective rewards. All treasures obtained must be brought back to the main city for appraisal and evaluation. Only then will ownership be confirmed. Such rules seem to tell citizens that during this period you can all freely rob each other. After all, in the eyes of greedy people, killing humans is always easier than killing monsters. Just as she said, such things were already happening. Meanwhile, in another map, a 4-person expedition team discovered an unregistered dungeon deep in the forest. Originally, they only needed to publish the coordinates to the military, and each person could earn 50 points reward without doing anything. However, their brains went haywire, and they insisted on taking a big gamble while young. But the plot didn't develop as expected. At this moment, extremely heavy footsteps suddenly echoed from within the cave, as if some terrifying existence was about to emerge. But these fools didn't take it seriously. Instead, they were all pumped up like they'd been injected with adrenaline, ready for action. Who would have thought that the next second, Kui Lai appeared before them, gasping for breath, carrying a huge bundle full of treasure on his back. When he saw these few people, Kui Lai's eyes lit up. He immediately flashed to their front and began enthusiastically explaining the dungeon strategy, such as the boss's weakness being fear of poison, how mages should kite from positions, when tanks should grab aggro in position. In short, everything about the dungeon was shouted out by Kui Lai without restraint. By the time those fools realized they should cover their ears, it was too late. Just like that, the 4 were quarantined by the military as soon as they returned. An entire hotel was filled with victims who had been affected by Kui Lai. Here, everyone spoke of Kui Lai with terror, but there was nothing they could do. Because until this mission ended, they all had to be locked up here, to minimize Kui Lai's sphere of influence. It also meant they would have no chance to earn any points during this mission. On the other side, after a bout of chaotic activity, Kui Lai had also collected quite a bit of treasure. Of course, the citizens who had been affected by him and had their sovereignty sacrificed totaled 2,452. Although he didn't want to do this, he couldn't help that his health bar was rapidly dropping. Demon King Christina was thrilled by this, and slightly reduced Kui Lai's punishment. At this moment, he already had a plan in mind. He wanted to see who would be the real controller when this mission ended. Just then, a loud eagle cry came from the distance. A giant winged beast was flying toward its nest built on a cliff. Upon closer inspection, the flying giant beast was actually a griffin with dragon bloodline, and Kui Lai was currently sitting right in the griffin's nest. The scene shifted to a motel. Several police officers were investigating a theft crime scene. The victim claimed they suddenly fainted while appraising treasure. When they woke up, they found their treasure had vanished. Similar cases had occurred dozens of times in just this one day, immediately drawing high attention from the police. They dispatched Level 14 Xu En and Level 6 Zhang Ding, 2 senior officers, to specifically handle the case. Because this mission's rules required all wilderness treasures to be brought back to the city for appraisal. An appraisal took 1 to 12 hours, so during this time the treasures were ownerless. Some people exploited this time gap to steal or rob. Just as they were heatedly analyzing the case, a police officer suddenly screamed toward the window, "It's Kui Lai! He's here! Quick, notify citizens to evacuate immediately!" Indeed, Kui Lai was currently riding the griffin outside the window, waving at them. Instantly, a figure burst through the window, immediately covering Kui Lai's mouth with his left hand, while his right hand's legendary wind god glove was already charged and ready. With a dull thud, both figures crashed heavily onto the floor. But the current scene shocked Officer Zhu, because Kui Lai showed no intention of dodging throughout, yet still wore that irritating expression on his face. In a dense forest somewhere, a goblin lord was casting a demon summoning forbidden spell, but 2 uninvited guests suddenly intruded. One of them suddenly raised his left hand, which glowed with eerie purple light. Explosive ring, legendary accessory. As the man raised his middle finger, the goblin lord, who had been full of vigor just moments before, was instantly engulfed by terrifying magical explosions. When the dust settled, only a crater several meters deep remained. Meanwhile, other members of this assault team were still clearing out the goblin village. This throwable axe that could automatically return was like death's scythe, reaping goblin lives mercilessly. Those goblins who managed to escape into the forest were picked off one by one by this hero-grade bow that increased firing speed and power. Of course, as a complete tactical squad, they naturally had a sniper hiding in elevated positions. The entire goblin village cleanup took less than half an hour. Mission accomplished perfectly, successfully rescuing 18 missing citizens. At the military command center, Quan Yang, who was out on a mission, just learned of Kui Lai's surrender. Meanwhile, At the city police station, the Griffin was lazily napping outside the station, while our Kui Lai was in the interrogation room focused on eating, completely ignoring Jiang Bing's questioning beside him. Kui Lai, you're now a criminal, involved in fraud, robbery, and even murder. However, Xu En's baseless accusations made Kui Lai look stunned for a moment. But the next second, Kui Lai grinned shamelessly and said, Right, you're all correct. Whatever you say goes, I admit to everything. With this shameless attitude of a pig not fearing boiling water. Kui Lai managed to stall them for several hours, even eating 2 meals. Despite all their good cop, bad cop tactics, neither Xu En nor Jiang Bing could extract any useful information from Kui Lai. It seemed like this guy surrendered just to freeload meals at the police station. Just then, the interrogation room door was suddenly pushed open. Officer Xu, an urgent assault case just occurred. The perpetrator possesses hero-grade equipment and requires your intervention to apprehend them. Also, now that citizens know Kui Lai surrendered and is detained at the police station. Without this troublemaker's interference, citizens' enthusiasm for treasure hunting has reached unprecedented heights. The barely maintained new order has fallen back into chaos. Theft and violent treasure robbery incidents are happening everywhere in the city, and these incidents can't be handled by just any police officers. Only officers with legendary equipment like Xu En can suppress crime and arrest criminals. Meanwhile, Kui Lai was methodically implementing his plan. This curled hair was no ordinary thing. It was a hair from Sun Wukong's tail. Taking advantage of a bathroom break, Kui Lai used this hair to create an identical duplicate, then controlled the duplicate to continue staying at the police station, while the real Kui Lai put on an invisibility cloak and quietly slipped out of the police station. With an eagle's cry, the Griffin suddenly took flight and left the police station. Naturally, Kui Lai flew away with it. Citizens had basically started leaving the city to hunt for treasure. It was time to initiate the next phase of the plan. Time flew by, and 4 days had passed. After these few days of activity, the Golden Deity's satisfaction with Kui Lai had risen to 6.74%. At this moment, he was riding the Griffin charging into a sandstorm. Then he suddenly raised his hand in signal. The exhausted Griffin finally released the huge bundle in its claws. Kui Lai's figure also fell with the bundle. In this vast space, countless gold coins and innumerable treasures were stored. These treasures were the fruits of Kui Lai's labor over the past few days. However, strange chewing and swallowing sounds echoed here. Little baby, eat more, so you can grow up quickly. Golden Deity baby, a golden deity who needs love and care. A man with festering palms and smoking body was walking toward his prey with a mocking expression, while the pearl in his palm was spewing purple mist. Abandoned magic pearl, god-level growth equipment that strengthens with use, can create various mixed toxins, and control those poisoned by the toxins. Small Fry, now poisoned and collapsed, was terrified to the extreme, trembling as she begged for mercy and offered all her treasures. However, the Poison King extended his right hand with apparent indifference. The surrounding poisonous mist instantly transformed into a python lunging at Small Fry. After an unknown amount of time, the acrid, foul-smelling mist was dispersed by the wind god glove. Xu En and Jiang Bing rushed to the scene after receiving the station's transmission, but the situation seemed somewhat bizarre. Besides the foul-smelling, poisonous mist permeating the area, there were many citizens lying unconscious on the ground, but they were only unconscious, not in life-threatening danger. From the treasure scattered on the ground, it seemed the perpetrator wasn't trying to kill and steal, but simply to poison and knock people out. But this bizarre method of poisoning dozens of people at once was unheard of to them both, and an uneasy feeling immediately filled their hearts. They both wondered whether the perpetrator was one person or an organization, and what was the purpose of doing this. It seemed that after Kui Lai, another hidden boss or organization had appeared. Suddenly, a theory popped into Jiang Bing's mind. He suggested they might as well go back to the station and ask Kui Lai, because ever since he surrendered to the police station, the city security seemed to have become uncontrollable. Hearing this, Xu En couldn't help but complain, "Why do you keep fixating on him? In my 20 years of police experience, that guy Kui Lai is just a bit obnoxious, but he's definitely not a bad person. But I have to admit that everything seems to have started because of Kui Lai." However, thinking of Kui Lai's previous obnoxious behavior, Xu En knew asking him would be pointless. He decided to first ask Kui Lai's friends. So Quan Yong and Gao Hui simultaneously received messages to return to the city to assist the police station with the case. Far away, Kui Lai inexplicably sneezed. He didn't know he was being blamed again. However, his situation wasn't good either. He was being manhandled by the Goblin Swordsman, just because the Goblin Swordsman was angry about being made Kui Lai's pet. However, the roughing up didn't diminish Kui Lai's obnoxiousness, but made him even more obnoxious. Recalling how he had been hot-headed and wanted to die together with Demon King Tuba, Kui Lai's actions were also to save him. After beating him up, his anger was vented, so he accepted becoming one of Kui Lai's 4 heavenly kings. This time, being summoned by Kui Lai was to partner with him in conquering a dungeon. This was a dungeon occupied by lizardmen. Each one possessed extraordinary combat power, yet Kui Lai wielded a watermelon knife split from a divine artifact. He slashed from the first floor east all the way to the bottom floor west, leaving nothing in his wake. The more he slashed, the more invigorated he felt, and the more he could freely control the surging energy in his body. But this scene made the Goblin Swordsman feel uneasy, reminding him to restrain himself and conserve strength. They were about to pass through that door into the Demon Kingdom, The dense dark aura inside could make all demons extremely powerful. What they were about to face would be a tough battle, unsuitable for excessive early consumption. Actually, without the Goblin Swordsman's reminder, Kui Lai already felt the changes in his body, because since arriving here, he could feel the punishment Demon King Krasina had placed on him was also amplified by the aura here, causing his health bar to drop rapidly. This was the real reason Kui Lai was going full throttle and charging forward. He was worried that staying here too long would cause him to die from health depletion first. Without further ado, after collecting the spoils of war, they came to the door leading to the Demon Kingdom. As soon as they entered, a gruff voice greeted them. "Welcome to my city. It's been a long time since I've received visitors from the surface." The speaker was the Demon King of this place, Karo, Demon King perched on the edge of the abyss, who enjoyed watching mortals slowly suffer and die. Crow's arrogant, human-despising attitude irritated Kui Lai, so he didn't bother with words and directly charged with his blade toward the Demon King. Just as he was about to succeed, a magic circle suddenly appeared out of thin air, pressing down to suppress him. The sudden attack sent him flying dozens of meters. Kui Lai was alarmed. This old lizard had some skills. He had played tricks even with an ordinary magic circle, and unlike Demon King Tuba, who devoured flesh and bone, this was a mage-type Demon King with super high physical defense, making physical attacks completely useless against him. If Quan Yang faced him, he'd probably only get instantly killed. So what Kui Lai needed to do now was eliminate the danger here as much as possible and reset this dungeon's difficulty. What did Kui Lai mean by this? Was he going to give the benefits to Quan Yang again to help Quan Yang grow, just like last time? While Kui Lai was thinking, Demon King Crow had already raised his hand and launched dozens of magic circles. Kui Lai and the goblin tacitly charged forward instead of retreating. Facing the whistling magic circles, they dodged what they could, and met with their swords what they couldn't dodge. Kui Lai also switched his sword for a mountain-splitting giant axe without hesitation. Seeing this, Demon King Crow didn't dare to underestimate them, hurriedly conjuring several magic circles as shields. However, this seemingly fierce axe was essentially a magic weapon that could convert physical attacks to magical attacks, making it perfect for dealing with Demon King Crow. Indeed, the moment the giant axe struck the magic circles, they shattered like paper, and Demon King Crow's figure was instantly engulfed in Kui Lai's fierce offensive. After receiving his orders, Quan Yang left amid his comrades' farewell and took a vehicle back to the city. But just as they entered the city streets, Quan Yang's expression suddenly changed. He immediately ordered the soldiers to turn around, while quickly grabbing his gun and loading it. However, it seemed too late, because from the tall buildings on both sides of the road, someone was already launching a sneak attack on his vehicle. But the soldier driving for the officer naturally had excellent driving skills, comparable to an F1 race car driver. With outstanding prediction and positioning, he quickly drove the car out of the district and into a small road. The encounter shocked Quan Yang greatly. When had the city's order become so chaotic that people dared attack military vehicles? But on second thought, he understood. Those combat-capable citizens were all out hunting treasure for the mission. Only police and powerless citizens remained in the city. Such an environment was a perfect opportunity for criminals. If truly powerful demons appeared now, the city could instantly become the most dangerous battlefield, just as Quan Yang had anticipated. The mastermind who had been causing trouble in the city these past days had now set his sights on him. A python formed from poisonous mist was roaring toward them. Instantly, their car was enveloped in poisonous mist. The soldier in the car wished he could stomp the gas pedal through the floor. In contrast, Quan Yang calmly took out a disc from his chest. Sanctuary Shield, hero-class item, can create a safe zone no larger than 3 meters. The next second, a magic shield suddenly expanded, isolating the poisonous mist outside the car. But before he could celebrate, a loud crash came from the hood. A man wreathed in poisonous mist appeared before his eyes. "Hello there, officer." The sudden situation didn't panic Quan Yang. After all, Helding's helmet could help him eliminate all states of chaos and fear. "Since you know I'm an officer, you're not qualified to speak with me. Go call your boss out." Quan Yang's words completely confused the man. What boss? He was the boss behind everything. Then he realized, "Kid, you dare insult me," and flew into a rage, immediately slapping the car window. While secretly activating the poison pearl in his palm, instantly his whole body surged with terrifying poisonous mist, madly spewing into the car. In just a few breaths, the dense poisonous mist had turned a rich black purple. A nearby electric pole was visibly corroding and melting at an alarming rate. This scene nearly scared the soldier to death, and Quan Yang was also shocked. Poisonous mist was not only impossible to defend against, but also extremely difficult to treat, and could even destroy entire cities. Just as he was stunned, the Sanctuary Shield suddenly shuddered and cracked. It seemed the Sanctuary Shield couldn't hold much longer. He had to stabilize the opponent first and look for an escape opportunity. So he said solemnly, "If you can meet my conditions, I can get out and surrender." His words made the man pause. "What?" Quan Yang crossed his arms and spoke again. "Stop now and voluntarily become my subordinate. Also, I can see your cerebellum is completely underdeveloped. But that's not a problem, I can help cure you." As soon as he finished speaking, the man's expression changed from brief bewilderment to extreme madness, clearly driven to explosive rage by Quan Yang. However, There was another person on the scene on the verge of breakdown, Captain. If being suicidal had ranks, you'd definitely be king tier. Just then, the man suddenly felt a strong wind coming from behind. But this wasn't just any wind. It was clearly a tornado. Before he could react, the man was swept away dozens of meters by the hurricane Xuan had unleashed. Having barely stabilized himself, he instinctively activated his poison pearl to change tactics, but found that due to the wind's influence, the spewed poisonous mist couldn't solidify or be controlled, so he simply pulled out his other weapon, giant slingshot hero-grade weapon made from giant sinew and bone, capable of explosive power. He refined a solid poison pill from the pearl in his palm, aimed at Xuan's position, and shot it with full force. His movement was naturally seen by Xuan, who didn't take it seriously and was about to face it head-on, when Kuan Yong suddenly rushed from the side and pushed him down. The next second, the ground was corroded into a large crater by the poison pill. This scene made Xuan's expression change as he put away his contempt. Just then, the military vehicle arrived and told them to get in quickly. However, as a police officer, Xuan absolutely couldn't allow himself to flee before a criminal. But Kuan Yong, who had traveled all this way, knew that the mysterious man still had many accomplices nearby. Obviously, now wasn't the time for showing off. Couldn't he consider it a strategic retreat? And with that guy's poison methods, without thorough preparation, recklessly attacking could very well harm innocent citizens with the poisonous mist. While they were arguing heatedly, the soldier in the car reminded them, "Captain, stop arguing. That guy seems to have left." Meanwhile, in another district of the city, a gang implementing robbery was encountered by Gao Hui, who had just returned to the city. But Gao Hui's mere appearance scared the thugs away. But before leaving, they still unwillingly threw a bottle at Gao Hui. Seeing this, a citizen immediately shouted in alarm, "Catch it quickly, don't let the bottle hit the ground. It's filled with poison." Just as the bottle was about to hit the ground, the Dragon Fang spear appeared just in time, catching it steadily. Then it was tossed high up, before falling back into Gao Hui's hands. Only then did the citizens' heart settle, and they told Gao Hui about this gang's crimes over the past 2 days. These thugs, relying on this unknown poison, had committed numerous crimes in just 2 days, stealing many treasures that citizens had worked hard to obtain. Even the treasures you shared with us were mostly stolen by these people. Hearing this immediately filled Gao Hui's heart with deep self-blame, and she remembered what Zhang Yan had once told her. In the eyes of greedy people, killing humans is always easier than killing monsters. The scene moved to the police station conference room. Originally, we called you two here about Kui Lai's case, but the situation has changed. According to our current information, the recent robbery cases in the city are all being orchestrated by a man named Yimo. But this person's bizarre poison methods are truly formidable. Police forces alone are simply inadequate. So we hope to get military support, as well as help from capable individuals like Miss Gao Hui. After speaking, he solemnly bowed to Kuan Yong and Gao Hui. Seeing this, the hot-tempered Gao Hui immediately slammed the table and vowed to give her all. Kuan Yong was also extremely anxious, because poison methods had too wide an impact. The longer they delayed, the broader the affected area would become. They had to eliminate Yimo quickly. Otherwise, unstable city order would affect citizens' mission progress, and then everyone would die. On the other side, this huge stadium had now become a poison den, surrounded by extremely dense poisonous mist that had formed into several massive pythons. Who would have thought that the next second, the dense poisonous mist seemed to be summoned and all rushed toward the stadium's center? I hope you'll be satisfied with this big gift I've prepared. Meanwhile, the moment the old lizard's magic circles touched the giant axe, they were destroyed like paper by the devastating attack, and his figure was engulfed in Kui Lai's fierce offensive. When the dust settled, Demon King Crow was covered in blood, with a deep, bone-visible wound on his abdomen, but his demeanor remained perfectly controlled, still maintaining that calm and composed appearance. However, Kui Lai mockingly taunted, "Old lizard, can you tell me about Demon King Christina now?" Hearing this, Crow's expression froze, and after taking a deep breath, "I don't know much about Christina, but I have heard of the Book of Christina. Every mortal who possesses this book dies from knowing too much, and the more they know, the faster they die." Crow's words sent Kui Lai into deep thought. However, this dejected appearance delighted Kero greatly. "I'll wait to see the day when pawn number 8 is destroyed because of you." As soon as he finished speaking, Crow's body suddenly surged with magical power, with circles appearing all around, obviously preparing to escape, but Kui Lai still had many unanswered questions. Just as he was about to act, the goblin grabbed him firmly, because approaching the circles at this time could very likely result in being teleported to the demon realm together. Just like that, held down firmly by the goblin, Kui Lai could only watch helplessly as Crow's figure gradually became ethereal. The next second, a thick pillar of magical light suddenly shot skyward. The griffin that had been circling above for a long time instantly caught the two. Even now, Kui Lai's thoughts were still immersed in Crow's words. He kept asking himself inwardly whether this book would really ultimately lead to the destruction of the entire city. Seeing his long silence, the goblin beside him couldn't help but pat his shoulder, signaling him not to overthink. For now, they should proceed with the established plan. Another 3 days passed in a flash. During these days, the joint action group composed of military, police, and citizens had engaged in multiple confrontations with Yimo's organization, although they captured many thugs and recovered most of the stolen treasures. Yimo still led a small group of thugs in stubborn resistance, but the frequent use of the poison pearl made Yimo's strength increasingly powerful. Of course, both Xuan and Gao Hui noticed the situation. Though they were extremely anxious, there was nothing they could do, because they truly couldn't defeat Yimo. this madman. This inevitably made Yimo somewhat arrogant, and since he'd been causing trouble for so many days without Kui Lai appearing, he assumed Kui Lai was afraid and didn't dare come. Of course, even if Kui Lai came, he wouldn't be afraid. After all, he had long prepared a grand gift for Kui Lai. Just as he was feeling triumphant, he was pierced by several bullets, with flashes of light exploding around him. One bullet even struck his head, but the toxic mist surrounding Yimo had already formed an astonishing defense. It only left him with minor surface wounds. Of course, this also exposed Kuan Yang's hidden position. The moment Yimo raised his hand, the toxic mist instantly transformed into a raging python that roared forward. It directly smashed through the wall. I advise you to give up. Those citizens are only focused on treasure hunting or hiding in the shadows out of fear. This city needs a leader like me to guide them. Unlike Kui Lai, I can share points and items according to your needs. This delusional speech about becoming the city's dictator immediately made Gao Hui's heart surge with anger. However, Xu En was even more furious. The wind god gloves had already condensed a fierce wind, and he threw a punch. Unexpectedly, Yimo had been waiting for this moment, and the toxic orb in his palm immediately shot out dazzling green light. In an instant, the toxic mist infected the fierce wind and surged back toward Xu En. The instantly reversed toxic wind transformed into several thick toxic pythons, surrounding Xu En and Gao Hui completely. A shield condensed from fire elements was suddenly raised by Gao Hui, but the situation didn't look good, because the toxic mist was constantly corroding the energy of the shield. As Yimo approached step by step, the toxic mist became increasingly dense. The next second, the shield could no longer hold and shattered into pieces. The toxic pythons that had been lying in wait immediately bared their fangs and bit toward the two. At this critical moment, Xu En not only took off his coat to cover Gao Hui, but also used his body to block the attacking toxic python. Accompanied by Gao Hui's shocked cry, Xu En was immediately infected by the toxin, and purple-black poison instantly coursed through his entire body. This scene immediately piqued Yimo's interest. He raised his hand to manipulate all the toxic pythons to bite the two. In a flash, the previously dense toxic mist instantly dissipated. The blade was sheathed. How can you not even handle such third-rate trash? The familiar voice made Gao Hui immediately look in that direction. She immediately exclaimed, "Master." The appearance of the Earth Spirit made Yimo dare not act rashly. After all, the Earth Spirit was the gatekeeper of the previous mission. Just then, everyone received an urgent system message. Another golden god has been discovered and will join the competition for this mission. This has caused the mission content to change. From now on, you can choose which golden god you want to offer the treasure to. Before the mission ends, the golden god who receives the most treasure will win. At that time, citizens who support the winning golden god will receive rich rewards, while those who don't will receive nothing. The system then announced the current data of the two golden gods. Golden deity of the city wealth value, 180,000. Supporting citizens, 34,000. Desert golden god wealth value, 38 million. Supporting citizens, 1. Seeing this, everyone's hearts couldn't help but tremble. Sure enough, it was that familiar routine. Needless to say, this was definitely that bastard Kui Lai's doing. I said that guy had been too quiet lately, and we actually believed the ghost story about him obediently turning himself into the police, amid everyone's angry curses. That fool Kui Lai actually suddenly appeared. During my absence, you smoky guy have been playing quite fancy tricks. Under everyone's astonished gazes, Kui Lai, riding on the lion-headed eagle, was swallowed in one gulp by the raging python formed from toxic mist. At this moment, within the toxic mist, dense and viscous poison was attacking Kui Lai, while Yimo had already drawn his bow and was waiting to ambush. The lion-headed eagle actually caught the attack with its mouth. However, the next scene shocked Yimo to his core. He had still underestimated the lion-headed eagle that Kui Lai rode, because it had another name, Griffin, whose usual diet consisted of various highly toxic demonic beasts. So even if Yimo exhausted all the magic power of his toxic orb to create this toxic mist, it was barely enough to make the Griffin half full. Just as Yimo's brain crashed, Kui Lai had already flashed behind him. Curious why your toxic mist doesn't work? Without waiting for Yimo's reaction, he raised his hand and pointed his orchid finger at Yimo. In an instant, his aura suddenly exploded with violent tremors. The two gasped. The previously invincible Yimo now lay on the ground like a dead dog, unconscious, while Kui Lai stood arrogantly to the side. Kui Lai called out in a deep voice, "The desert golden god has been contracted by me. If anyone dares to covet it, they will be offered as sacrifices to the demon king Colasina, making you unable to earn a single point in all future missions." Well said. Kui Lai had shown off again. Looking at Kui Lai's dashing departing figure, the few people present had various expressions. The next morning, an emergency meeting aimed at Kui Lai was temporarily convened. It was being held in front of the city hall. To prevent Kui Lai, this troublemaker, from damaging the citizens' interests, Gao Hui called on all citizens to unite as much as possible and follow the organization's unified arrangements. Only in this way could they efficiently harvest more treasures, so that the golden deity of the city could achieve final victory in the competition. Soon they established the City Alliance for citizens who responded to the call and began operating intensively. First, to facilitate the City Alliance's supplies in the wilderness, they would attack monster lairs and use them as supply bases. Of course, if they were lucky, they could also make a small fortune in the monster lairs. Second was the strategy for dungeons. Although the monsters inside were quite powerful, High risk meant high returns. Military forces and high-level fighters with weapons and equipment would lead the conquest. Finally, all collected treasures would be sent to supply stations, then transported back to the evaluation center in the city by specialized convoys. Although they often encountered monster blockades on the way back to the city, the citizens also grew rapidly through repeated battles. They could basically make the monsters return in defeat, successfully transporting the treasures back to the city, locking them in heavily guarded warehouses. After several days of this cycle, the citizens' accumulated wealth points soared from the original 180,000 points to 330,000 points. But these points were still far from Kuilai's accumulated 38 million points. However, citizens had recently almost leveled the jungle and canyon areas. The treasures obtained were also decreasing day by day. If they wanted to harvest more treasures, they would have to advance into the desert region, but the desert was Kuilai's territory, not to mention whether Kuilai would let them enter obediently. Just considering the city's current reserves, they weren't sufficient to handle the equipment and manpower needed for crossing the desert. At the same time, a shimmering monkey hair was quietly lying on the table, while Xuen glared angrily beside it. Damn it, Kuilai actually fooled us with just one hair back then. Now recalling Kuilai's previous operations, Zhang Bing somewhat understood Kuilai's approach. After all, due to the previous two missions, citizens were deeply afraid of Kuilai and kept their distance. So if he had announced the desert golden god from the beginning, citizens would definitely not have acted out of fear. Now he used himself as bait to stir up citizens' anger. This way, citizens could overcome their inner fear of him and become more united. But the consequence of doing this would make Kuilai even more isolated from the city. Could this be the result he wanted? After this brainstorming session, Xuen and Zhang Bing also realized how terrifying Kuilai was. This guy was playing the game while having everything under control. On the other side, Yimo, who had been imprisoned, had been very quiet these past few days. But from his trembling hands, it wasn't hard to see how unwilling his heart was. He could barely suppress his burning anger, but he still needed to wait for the toxic orb to recharge. However, Gao Hui, who was responsible for guarding, wasn't to be trifled with. Right now, Yimo was deliberately using words to anger Gao Hui, to cover his intention of activating the toxic orb. Put away your tricks. I know that your magic orb activation speed isn't fast. Hearing this, Yimo immediately realized that the police had learned this weakness from his subordinates. Regarding his subordinates' betrayal, Yimo was quite open-minded, because he knew that as long as he could escape from prison, those guys would kneel and lick his feet again. As for that weakness, it would soon no longer exist. After all, his toxic orb was a growth-type divine item. There were still many abilities waiting to be developed, as long as he could develop the toxic orb to perfection. Even Kuilai wouldn't be his opponent then. This city would still fall under his control. Gao Hui, who had remained silent throughout, couldn't help but tremble in her heart. She dared not imagine what this city would become without Kuilai. She even thought about killing Yimo now to eliminate future troubles. On the other side, the mysterious Jiang Yan discovered a stone tablet deep in the jungle. It was precisely because of this discovery that she learned another hidden truth about this mission. This immediately made her eyes narrow with delight. She immediately called Gao Hui, stating directly that she had intelligence. This intelligence could determine the success or failure of this mission, and she now wanted to sell it to high-ranking officials. Learning this news, Gao Hui was immediately overjoyed, because there were less than 48 hours left in the 2-week mission deadline. Soon the two agreed to meet at the police station in an hour. At the same time, this intelligence was also transmitted back to the base command center after hanging up. Military and police forces immediately began joint analysis of this intelligence. Soon it was time for the agreed meeting. But surprisingly, Yimo was also invited into the conference room. Seeing this, Xuan's hot temper couldn't help but explode on the spot. But platoon leader Jin, representing the military, actually spoke to dissuade him, saying that Yimo would be a great help in this operation. Speaking of which, he entered the topic under everyone's astonished gazes. As the pictures were displayed, platoon leader Jin also revealed the content of this operation codenamed Butcher. According to the inscription, the juvenile golden god could be killed, so they planned to infiltrate the desert and kill the golden piglet that Kuilai was hiding and worshipping alone. Although this couldn't avoid a direct confrontation with Kuilai, for the benefit of most citizens, it was indeed worth the risk. This was also why he invited Yimo to the meeting. Hearing this, the corner of Yimo's mouth immediately curved into a playful smile. Since this city needs me, why don't we make a deal? The scene shifted to the windswept desert region. At this moment, Kuilai and the Earth Spirit were playing chess in some ruins. Seeing Kuilai's strategic appearance, the Earth Spirit couldn't help but want to find something to mock him with. Your health bar is still slowly dropping. It seems Colosina's punishment continues. Don't you plan to harm some more suckers to sacrifice ownership? Just as Kuilai was about to speak, he keenly sensed someone entering the desert. Looking in the direction he turned, sure enough, a team suddenly emerged from the flying sand and dust in the distance. That's right, it was the action team led by Quan Yang. Then, at Quan Yang's command, everyone in the vehicles immediately prepared for battle. Let the little chick play with them first. The next second, the massive figure of the lion-headed eagle was already circling above the convoy. Gao Hui raised her hand to defend. Unexpectedly, a sudden change occurred. Gao Hui and Xuan's figures were swept up into the air by toxic mist. Thinking that Yimo had betrayed them at the last moment immediately caused the two to be furious. But they immediately understood Yimo's intention, and in an instant, the three turned their energy to attack the lion-headed eagle. On the other side, The team members led by Quan Yang had already broken into the ruins, surrounding the position where Kui Lai was located. However, what no one expected was that Yimo had somehow hidden in a house within the ruins. These idiots actually wanted to use me to help deal with Kui Lai, not knowing that you are the ones being used. At the same time, platoon leader Jin was on a boulder dozens of kilometers away, observing everything happening in the distance. However, beneath the boulder at his feet, an even larger team was hidden. Let's go. Quan Yang and the others have held Kui Lai back. We should hurry too. Actually, the military's plan wasn't to kill Kui Lai's golden piglet. Obviously, they also knew that was almost impossible to accomplish. The real plan was for Quan Yang to hold Kui Lai back for them, and also dump the madman Yimo on Kui Lai to deal with, while platoon leader Jin led another group to steal from Kui Lai's home. To steal as many treasures as possible, they had deployed dozens of large trucks. However, when they confidently drove into the desert heartland, many flying monsters were shot down and fell. Fortunately, the personnel brought this time all had formidable combat power. It only took half an hour to resolve the battle. When platoon leader Jin came to his senses, he was shocked by the scene before him. Could this devastated city be some city from the original Earth? Broken photo frames scattered on the ground, and these two pieces of performance art placed in the living room. But what interested platoon leader Jin most were these treasures scattered all over the ground. These corpses have been dead for at least a year. However, it was this casual remark from a teammate that made him instantly grasp some important information. That is, their mission duration might be measured in years, while for us it's currently measured in weeks. If this is the case, then assuming both cities' games started on the same day, but the time limits are different durations. This assumption immediately made his heart tremble. He also realized that the player who summoned them to this game was an existence that could manipulate time at will. On the other side, the lion-headed eagle was under attack. Xuan was channeling energy into the wind god gloves. In a flash, two sharp wind blades flew out, striking the lion-headed eagle's left and right wings respectively. But such attacks didn't seem to matter much to the lion-headed eagle with its amazing self-healing ability. But suddenly, it seemed stunned. Gao Hui had actually leaped onto its back during the chaos, but Gao Hui didn't attack immediately. Instead, she showed guilt and remorse. "I'm sorry, we must win." The next second, a swift attack pierced through flames and struck the lion-headed eagle directly. This stunning strike was thanks to the Dragon Fang spear in Gao Hui's hand. Such legendary equipment could not only unleash powerful attack force, but also provide the user with additional superhuman combat power. This was why Gao Hui, Quan Yang, and others could wield legendary equipment in their hands even at level 1. But the disadvantage was also obvious. They couldn't control this powerful energy at will, and often accidentally injured their teammates. Poor Quan Yang had just been singed by Gao Hui's flames. This suggests that Kui Lai seemed to be intentionally honing the cooperative combat abilities between Gao Hui's group and the team, urging them to further control the energy of the legendary equipment in their hands. The movement behind immediately alerted Gao Hui and Xuan. Turning around, they faced Kui Lai's smiling face. "Congratulations on passing the first stage." But Xuan's emotions suddenly became anxious as he shouted, "Kui Lai, enough! We didn't come to steal your treasure, but to awaken and save you before you break with the city. I've always believed you're a good person." Xuan's unexpected words deeply touched Kui Lai's heart, and the curve of his mouth also slightly rose at this moment. But the next second, his figure suddenly crouched down, borrowing force to leap powerfully. Holy crap, this really is an inexperienced kid. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Gao Hui's pupils suddenly contracted. She instinctively channeled all her body's energy and raised her spear to block in front of Xuan. The next moment, dazzling blue-white energy impact erupted. Blocked by Gao Hui's spear, it exploded to both sides. I didn't expect the only one who could react would be my useless disciple. It seems I really need to be careful not to accidentally kill you all. Although everyone didn't understand how the Earth Spirit, the gatekeeper of the previous mission, stayed behind, but it was a more terrifying existence than the fallen angel and the giant spider. On the other side, the severely injured and unconscious lion-headed eagle had been brought back to its nest by Kui Lai. Here, the lion-headed eagle's injuries could recover better. "Little chick, I'm sorry you suffered. Rest and heal in peace. I won't let anyone disturb you. When you're healed, I'll give you a great opportunity." Having just finished painting this pie in the sky, Kui Lai took out an item, which was actually a legendary weather control orb that could change weather in a small area. In an instant, dark clouds gathered above the eagle's nest, accompanied by terrifying lightning and thunder. Having set all this up, Kui Lai finally left with peace of mind. Along the way, Kui Lai couldn't help but think of what Xuan had just said to him. "It seems there are still people who recognize me." At the same time, the Earth Spirit seemed to have already fought with Gao Hui's group. Looking at their miserable state, they were obviously no match. "Master, please, just let us pass." Facing Gao Hui's pleading, the Earth Spirit showed a cold expression. "If you want to convince me, the only way is to raise your spear and defeat me." Just as the master and disciple were at their limit, Quan Yang, who had been unconscious on the ground, suddenly sprang behind Gao Hui and suggested retreating. Quan Yang made this suggestion for two reasons. First, he could feel that the Earth Spirit had no intention of killing them. Second, their purpose of restraining and attracting Kui Lai had been achieved. Presumably, platoon leader Jin's side had successfully entered the desert heartland by now, so the current situation could be treated as a strategic retreat. They would go back to formulate a plan and then return to avenge their defeat. Just like that, Gao Hui's group quietly withdrew, and the Earth Spirit didn't try to stop them. Soon, Kui Lai's figure landed beside the Earth Spirit. After some inquiry, he learned the whole story. He also had some understanding of Kuan Yong, who was a rare general talent, possessing astonishing judgment and a calm mind, able to analyze pros and cons in time and make optimal strategic deployments. He hoped this surprise attack against him would make them understand that for a surprise attack to succeed, it required cooperation between various departments and thorough strategic deployment. The three of them behind him represented the three largest forces in the city. The mutual checks and balances of the three forces also prevented monopolization of power. As for Yimo, who had slipped away in the chaos, Kui Lai had actually noticed long ago. Since he had nothing to do now, he might as well go meet him. At the same time, Yimo seemed to have found where the golden piglet was hidden, but was blocked by the terrifying sandstorm here. But to kill the golden piglet and monopolize the treasure, he could only steel himself and struggle forward. The desert plan was proceeding intensively, and the citizens in the urban area weren't idle either. Under Zhang Bing's coordination, they were systematically sorting and processing the collected treasures. Now they had to work overtime, because according to news just received, treasures collected in the desert region would arrive tonight. At this moment in the desert ruins, Gao Hui seemed to have unlocked a new way to use the Dragon Fang spear, sitting leisurely around a grill with Xuan, roasting food by the fire. Compared to this comfortable scene, Yimo's situation was miserable. This also made Yimo wonder, wasn't the toxic orb supposed to get stronger with use? Why was it that when he repeatedly used it here to fight against the fierce wind, he couldn't feel the toxic orb's proficiency improve at all? Just as he was puzzled, Kui Lai, who had been monitoring him through the magic book, revealed a smile, because he understood Yimo's experience after obtaining the toxic orb. From beginning to end, Yimo was used to hiding in the shadows, only using the toxic orb against weak monsters or ordinary citizens. But now, as the toxic orb had grown, it could no longer gain proficiency by hunting low-level monsters, making his toxic mist completely ineffective against elite-level monsters. But if Gao Hui and he had a good fight, it would surely give his toxic orb significant improvement. However, Kui Lai had already planned this problem for him. At the same time, Gao Hui's group had already launched their second siege against the Earth Spirit. Not bad, your cooperation is much better than last time. Consider this surprise attack passed, but it's still not enough to break through my protective aura. After speaking, the Earth Spirit released the large hand that had been restraining Gao Hui. This action made Gao Hui stunned, because this meant the Earth Spirit would no longer stop them from raiding Kui Lai's base. Remember, when you're not strong enough, multi-party cooperation is also a form of combat. After speaking, he actually turned and walked away, no longer meaning to stop them. Seeing this, Kuan Yong's group didn't dare to linger, afraid the Earth Spirit might change its mind. After they had gone far, the corner of the Earth Spirit's mouth curved into an imperceptible smile. But the careful Kuan Yong was still full of doubts. Was the Earth Spirit letting them go to test them or to train them intentionally? Soon, Kuan Yong's group also arrived at their destination. Before them was still that intimidating tornado. But after long discussions between Kuan Yong and Gao Hui, they couldn't come up with a feasible plan to get through the tornado. However, Xuan walked to the side, looking thoughtfully at the wind god gloves on his hands. The next second, he suddenly channeled energy instantly to his arms. With a shout, the howling wind actually became smaller. However, just as everyone was getting excited, Kui Lai's mocking voice carried over with the wind. I didn't expect Officer Shu to gain the wind god's recognition so quickly. Taking advantage of everyone's bewilderment, Kui Lai casually threw out 2 tickets. Free warp ticket, hero-level items, paper tickets that could instantly transport a person to where they wanted to go. In the blink of an eye, Gao Hui and Xuan's figures disappeared on the spot, teleported to another place. Looking at the unfamiliar surroundings, the two instinctively assumed combat positions. I really didn't expect. You Bates are still alive. Unexpectedly, facing Yimo's sudden appearance, the two remained completely calm. This couldn't help but astonish Yimo. He also timely noticed the changes in the two. How had their auras become so powerful in just one day? Like 2 primordial beasts. At this time, Gao Hui was the first to break the standoff. Kui Lai sent you here? What a joke, he can't order me around. Actually, Yimo had also been flash transported into this castle by Kui Lai. Finally, the three came to a not too mature conclusion. Kui Lai was worried about the desert golden piglet being captured, so he teleported them out. Just as the three were brainstorming, Kui Lai's figure suddenly appeared. But this appearance wasn't as playful as before, but directly started wielding his sword. Seeing this, Yimo, who had been holding back his anger, immediately burst into rage, swinging his fist at Kui Lai. But Kui Lai, dodging the attack, suddenly turned to attack Gao Hui, catching Gao Hui off guard. However, just as Gao Hui couldn't withstand it, Kui Lai suddenly stopped and leaped to the side. How about we play a game? Whoever among you three can hit me, I'll give them the desert golden piglet. This statement immediately made Gao Hui and Xuan, who understood him, look embarrassed, knowing he wasn't up to any good. But the Chunabu Yimo was getting excited, obviously believing Kui Lai's nonsense, repeatedly saying great. On the other side, Kuan Yong had already reported to his superiors that Gao Hui and Xuan had lost contact, but the superiors didn't think this was bad news. At least they had held Kui Lai back, and also dumped the troublesome Yimo. Most importantly, it didn't affect this plan to enter the desert for treasure hunting. Although they couldn't find Kui Lai's base, Platoon Leader Jin had also harvested quite a few treasures in the desert heartland ruins. However, judging by the estimated value of currently obtained treasures, they weren't confident they could exceed Kui Lai's total, but there wasn't more time to formulate a new plan, nor were there extra personnel to execute it. The only option now was to carry the original plan through to the end. However, Yimo, who had been unsuccessful in his attacks, immediately decided to change strategy. His left hand had quietly condensed a large-scale technique. Too brutal, he's still a child. After knocking out Yimo, Kui Lai looked mockingly at Xu En and Gao Hui. The two exchanged glances meaningfully. The next second, two powerful auras suddenly erupted. Although all three were friends, now they would fight for their respective positions. Xu En originally wanted to grab and hold Kui Lai, but unexpectedly his flash grab missed. "Officer Shu, I received your kindness, but I won't go easy like the Earth Spirit did. Indeed, not to mention Kui Lai's level. Just the attribute bonuses from his legendary equipment made Xu En and Gao Hui despair. Moreover, they could both see that Kui Lai wasn't using his full strength at all. Seeing this, a deep sense of powerlessness welled up in Gao Hui's heart. But her stubborn nature made her search through the Earth Spirit's teachings in her mind, unexpectedly. Just as she entered her thoughts, the communication device on her ear received Kuan Yong's call. Since Gao Hui and Xu En were teleported away by Kui Lai, Kuan Yong had been searching for their location. As the search area continuously expanded, finally, based on the sounds of fighting, he locked onto their position. In the call, they quickly exchanged information about their current situations. But what frustrated Gao Hui most was, according to Kuan Yong's speculation, she and Xu En were in quite a predicament. They might have fallen into Kui Lai's scheme and become sacrifice offerings for ownership. Although Gao Hui didn't believe Kui Lai was that kind of person, she also wanted to understand the basis for Kuan Yong's speculation. Unexpectedly, as soon as she opened her mouth, Kuan Yong was anxious to end the call, planning to integrate information and formulate a plan, while asking Gao Hui's side to buy him more time. Helpless Gao Hui could only turn to look at Xu En, who was currently being toyed with by Kui Lai. Her heart was full of bitterness. A breath of defeat escaped from her nose and mouth as she cheered herself on. Now she could only drag it out second by second. Who knows how much time passed. The knocked-out Yimo finally slowly awakened, but as soon as he regained consciousness, he was startled again. Gao Hui and Xu En were also lying unconscious nearby, and their condition seemed even worse than his. Kui Lai was thoughtfully flipping through the magic book nearby, seemingly sensing Yimo's approach. Kui Lai closed the magic book and said, "Kid, your days are numbered. If you don't upgrade the toxic orb soon, you'll suffer backlash from it." Yimo directly activated the toxic orb to attack him. It seems kind words can't save the damned ghost after all. On the other side, the fallen Gao Hui was again awakened by Kuan Yong through the earpiece. Kuan Yong concisely informed her of the upcoming action plan. At the same time, platoon leader Jin's group had also completed their desert treasure hunting operation. The harvest was truly enormous. The trucks they brought weren't even enough to carry everything, but time was pressing, so they could only have the convoy transport one batch back first. The rest had to be carried by manpower. Time came to night. The golden deity of the city's wealth value had reached nearly 16 million. While platoon leader Jin had experienced a whole night of fierce fighting, finally at dawn, he waited for the returning convoy. The harvested treasures after a night of appraisal brought the golden deity of the city's wealth value to nearly 27 million. Of course, this wasn't the final figure because the batch of treasures platoon leader Jin brought back this morning hadn't been appraised yet. However, today is also the last day of the mission deadline. As time ticks away, the wealth value of golden deity of the city worshipped by the citizens has reached 37 million, directly approaching the desert golden piglet's wealth value of 38 million. At this moment, there are 21 minutes and 32 seconds left until the mission ends. The agreed action signal comes through the earpiece. Xu En immediately channels his energy. Two powerful gusts of wind suddenly appear, striking toward Kui Lai. With Xu En's roar, the two winds merge into one, sweeping Kui Lai up into the sky. Although this attack can't really harm Kui Lai, it can briefly hold him back. Seeing this, Yimo wants to rush forward to finish him off, but just as he's about to act, he notices Xu En turning and running away, immediately sensing something's wrong. Instinctively turning around, he sees a signal flare rising in the distance, and a sandboat is docked at the castle's perimeter. Xu En suddenly leaps onto the sandboat, and immediately sets sail. Who knew Yimo would also lose his mind, and chase after them? Poison mist transforms into claws, grabbing hold of the sandboat. As for Gao Hui, she's clutching dozens of large and small stamina potions, gulping them down. Kui Lai, who breaks through the wind, witnesses this scene, and a bad premonition immediately rises in his heart. "Kui Lai, do you remember how you taught me to activate the Dragon Fang Spear's hidden skill in the first mission? I still clearly remember the pain when the Dragon Fang Spear pierced through my abdomen." "Wait, stop, it's not like that. You haven't met the most important condition yet. If you forcibly use that skill, you're essentially committing suicide." Kui Lai instantly teleports to block the spear. Unexpectedly, his action draws a charming smile from Gao Hui. However, Kui Lai's expression remains unmoved, as if everything is within his expectations, but still asks, "You already know the final activation condition, don't you?" Gao Hui doesn't hide it and openly admits, revealing Kuan Yong's entire plan. After all, this scene was part of Kuan Yong's plan from the beginning. Kuan Yong calculated that even if Kui Lai guessed their plan, he wouldn't bear to watch Gao Hui launch this self-destructive attack. So as long as Kui Lai intervenes to stop Gao Hui, he won't have time to prevent them from raiding the Golden Piglet's lair. After understanding the details, Kui Lai is speechless, but feels somewhat embarrassed in front of Gao Hui. He grumbles dissatisfiedly, "Your sandboat isn't that fast either. I could catch up if I really tried." The scene shifts, and there are now 7 minutes and 23 seconds left until the mission ends. Quan Yang has already made preparations in front of the tornado. Xu En, who just arrived, doesn't dare delay for a moment. With Xu En's strike, a hole is suddenly blasted at the bottom of the tornado. Xu En shouts, "Let's go," but an unexpected change occurs. Imo, who had been trailing behind, suddenly springs out, controlling the poisonous serpent formed from his mist to rush into the hole first. In an instant, the powerful pulling force feedback from the mist inside the hole fills Yimo with wild joy. He suddenly pulls with all his might. Seeing this, Quan Yang immediately orders everyone to open fire, then pulls the pin on a grenade. The next moment, flames fill the sky. Meanwhile, the restoration and appraisal of treasures in the city is nearing completion. "What did you do? I asked you to restore this shield. How did you end up painting your wife's portrait on it?" At this moment, there are 5 seconds left until the mission ends. Golden Deity of the City slowly descends over the city. Golden Deity of the City achieves complete victory. In contrast, the desert golden piglet transforms into a broken shell and dissipates in the yellow sand. Imo nearby lets out wild, maniacal laughter, already fantasizing about clearing his shopping cart. Unexpectedly, the next second, his laughter comes to an abrupt halt. Due to the influence of ownership sacrifice, all your rewards will be confiscated. This information directly petrifies Imo on the spot. At this time, the system message pops up again. "Mission ended. All citizens will be forcibly teleported back to the city." "Quan Yang, thanks to your plan this time, come on, I'll buy you a drink." Just like that, everyone present leaves to celebrate, leaving only poor Yimo still frozen in his original position. Next comes the time to reveal this mission's point ranking. 3rd place Jiang Yan, earning 33,000 points. 2nd place Cheng Tai, 44,000 points. 1st place is quite unexpected. That's right, it's him, Old Wang from next door to Gao Hui, earning over 320,000 points. Just as Old Wang's brain is still processing, he's lifted up by excited citizens. "Don't worry everyone, I'll use my points to buy items and distribute them to each person." In this mission battle, except for Kui Lai, all citizens received double point rewards. Additionally, Golden Deity of the City granted a special reward to Quan Yang's group, who directly killed the golden piglet, a 12-sided die. That has the highest probability of producing hero-level equipment. Moreover, their number 08 chess piece also received Golden Deity of the City's blessing. City experience increases by 10%, meaning the points consumed by citizens will be fed back into the city's infrastructure construction, significantly enhancing the city's overall strength. Of course, disappointing news follows. There are 24 hours left until the next mission begins. As for Kui Lai, who positioned himself as the city's enemy, his situation is somewhat tragic, though he alone suffers. Seeing the city's development and the citizens' united will fills his heart with comfort. Indeed, as he expected, after this mission, Kui Lai is no longer an invincible figure in the citizens' minds. Though this result came at the cost of Gao Hui's interests, it also earned Gao Hui quite a few supporters. These people spontaneously approach Old Wang, all wanting to follow their goddess. Gao Hui witnesses this scene, reminding her of what Kui Lai said back in Sand City. "Gao Hui, do you understand human nature? When facing something terrible, people go through states of division, doubt, struggle, and despair. So can I ask you a favor? If the city falls into despair again, when people wearily lift their heads in despair, please become the hope that helps them stand up again." Recalling this, Gao Hui's expression suddenly becomes determined, her mind made up. Walking into the crowd, she says solemnly, "To protect this city, I will establish a guild called Phoenix Flower. I hope everyone can join and fight alongside me." Old Wang next door is also appointed as vice president. The guild's purpose is to protect the city and ordinary citizens, so it receives enthusiastic support from the general public. Following this, the military also establishes a guild, called Number 8 City, managed and coordinated by platoon leader Jin, with Quan Yang serving as executive commander. However, surprisingly, the last official guild is actually established by the Chunibyu Yimo, and the guild name is equally Chunibyu, called Kingdom. Although this guy can't beat Kui Lai, at least his poison pearl is a legendary weapon. So many power-hungry outlaws are recruited into his guild. Ridiculously, their guild's stated goal is to defeat Sui Lai and then rule this city. After listening to Zhang Bing's report, Zhuan can't help but wonder why the police station hasn't established an external guild. As for this question, Zhang Bing naturally understands, because the police station's functional scope has always been within the city, busy protecting citizens and arresting criminals taking advantage of the chaos. So they haven't accumulated the 1 million points needed to establish a guild during these 3 missions. Does this mean the police station will become an optional institution in the near future? As he says this, Xuen suddenly freezes. Seeing the crowd gathering, Xuen turns to look at Zhang Bing. "You seem to have been quite busy while I was away. What else? You don't think I plan to use these people to undermine the entire police station, do you?" Seemingly sensing the hidden meaning in Zhang Bing's eyes, Xuen's aura suddenly flares up, just as the two are facing off. A report interrupts their silent confrontation. Xuen takes the handed personnel list. The officer begins reporting the strange things encountered during the investigation. These people are all victims of Sui Lai's ownership sacrifice during this mission, but without exception, they're all habitual criminals or wanted fugitives. lives. This statement surprises even Jiang Bing. No wonder only that bastard Yimo came out to cause trouble during the mission. Turns out Kui Lai was already handling many problems for us behind the scenes. Don't mention that bastard in front of me. Also, that group of people you gathered outside the police station must be managed according to police plans. Don't mess around, understand? Mess around. Of course not. I already have my own plan. Several days of recruitment have been very disappointing, leaving platoon leader Jin depressed day after day. After 3 missions of consumption, not only are personnel not being replenished, but previously stored ammunition, gasoline, and other supplies are almost depleted. Now all aspects are actively seeking alternatives, striving for self-sufficiency. It seems the entire city is regressing. But fortunately, the citizens' energy is still relatively abundant, so promoting the process of self-sufficiency shouldn't encounter too much resistance. Additionally, during the treasure hunt in the desert ruins, they also found many good things left by City Number 4. Among these filed documents are many experiences summarized by City Number 4, many of which can be applied to their current situation. On the other side, Kui Lai is dazing on the tower. Suddenly, a woman's voice sounds nearby. Startling Kui Lai, "Are you a ghost? How do you walk without making sound? How can you say that? I came to thank you. Thanks to you, I had a lot of fun in this mission." Saying this, Zhang Yan leans her body closer, making Kui Lai somewhat flustered. Zhang Yan asks, "Why don't you create a guild?" Being asked about establishing a guild, Kui Lai has actually considered it. But everyone knows that if he creates a guild, the members joining would inevitably become sacrifices for ownership sacrifice. Who would want to become such a sucker? But Jiang Yan came this time specifically to become a member of Kui Lai's guild. After learning of Kui Lai's thoughts, she's completely deflated, abruptly standing up and leaving. But before leaving, she still doesn't give up. Once again sincerely proposing that whenever Kui Lai needs her, she can become a sacrifice for ownership sacrifice. Then she leaps down. Watching Zhang Yan's departing figure, Kui Lai also falls into deep thought. Factors like ownership sacrifice and the Demon King's punishment indeed affect his strategy, but this also led Kui Lai, unwilling to be controlled by others, to formulate a zero-sum plan from the beginning of the 3rd mission. The current result is exactly as he planned, gaining no rewards from this mission. Those criminals he sacrificed for ownership were also isolated and received no rewards, meaning the Demon King also gained nothing. However, the reason Kui Lai did this was to send a message to the Demon King: as long as you dare disturb me, you'll be the one losing in the end. But now that his attitude and counterattack have been made, he's waiting to see the Demon King's response. Suddenly, an unexpected change occurs. The space where Kui Lai is located suddenly changes. When Kui Lai comes to his senses again, a slender figure stands not far from him, with the magic book floating happily around her. Seeing this scene, this person's identity is naturally self-evident. Once again, swatting away the food on the table, Kui Lai's heart is filled with frustration. How is this guy different from the Demon Kings encountered before? Shouldn't enemies fight each other when they meet? What's with eating? But at this moment, realizing the power gap between them, he can only suppress his anger and endure, thinking that since he can't fight, he'll curse a few harsh words to vent his anger. But just as he opens his mouth, he discovers he can't make a sound. His heart jumps in alarm, but just then, an abrupt voice eerily echoes in his mind. "I don't want to cause trouble. Bringing you here is just out of interest. As for our relationship, you can see it as an interest or a need." At this point, Kui Lai realizes that Demon King Klasina is communicating with him through consciousness. Moreover, Klasina's words suggest she wants to redefine their relationship through his choice. This makes Kui Lai think he has the situation under control. But then Klasina's voice echoes in his mind again. "Put away that idiotic look. To me, you're just one of the 6 people I've chosen, and I am your only choice." Hearing this, Kui Lai's expression freezes. Damn, this guy can actually read minds, and I realize I actually have no choice. Just as Kui Lai is stunned, 2 magic books suddenly fall before him. Klasina's urging also echoes in his mind. "Choose quickly, but I must remind you, if you choose interest, everything will remain unchanged. But if you choose need, you will gain a new opportunity, an opportunity sufficient to change the fate of all units." Hearing this, Kui Lai immediately becomes interested, while also asking, "By all units, do you mean every person, including people from different cities?" To this, Klasina directly gives a definite reply. Getting this answer, Kui Lai can't help but be somewhat suspicious. Can Klasina really do it? If it's true, she's definitely not an ordinary Demon King. Just as Kui Lai is lost in thought, Klasina urges him to make his choice quickly. Instinctively speaking, he's surprised to discover he can speak again, and takes the opportunity to ask another question that puzzles him. What is Klasina's purpose in doing this? As soon as he finishes speaking, Klasina, who is just composed, suddenly changes expression, her face full of madness and obsession. "I want everything the players have, everything they possess, including skin, bones, souls, everything, everything." Klasina's crazy appearance directly stuns Kui Lai. Good lord, he actually views the demon god controlling this game as an enemy. That's too awesome. Recalling the demon kings encountered before, they regarded the demon god as a supreme existence. These two really can't be compared in terms of mentality. This scene also seems to inspire Kui Lai. He reaches out and slams his hand on one of the magic books, clearly having made his choice. "Very good, you made an incredible yet correct choice." Immediately, Kui Lai suddenly feels his body lighten. A sense of weightlessness instantly strikes, and his form can't stop falling. At the same time, Clasina's whisper echoes in his mind. I will erase your memory of being here to prevent discovery by players. The scene shifts, and Kuilai opens his eyes in confusion, as if he had just fallen asleep. Looking at the magic book before him, he thoughtfully wonders why he hasn't seen Clasina's response after doing so much. It seems Kuilai really has no memory of what just happened. On the other side, 10,000 meters above the city, a large hand is operating the game interface. As his finger presses down, an NPC is summoned to city number 08. City defense style, melee type, will automatically attack enemies invading the city. If you attack the NPC, he will regard you as an enemy. His appearance draws many citizens to watch, but after seeing the NPC's attributes and level, they're all scared away. Only Jiang Yan knows. This is a benefit granted by the player due to their victory in the last mission. Although there's only one, it provides some protection for the city. Meanwhile, soldiers in the barracks are training intensively. But the training subjects are no longer firearms and artillery, but cold weapons like swords and shields. Physical exhaustion and pain during training are directly recovered through point exchanges. Weapon workshops in the city are also bustling, creating various weapons for the upcoming mission. Other citizens are organized to build various defensive fortifications. Other civilian organizations are also performing their duties. As for Kuilai, he's not idle either, practicing martial arts under the goblin's tutelage with fake enthusiasm. Then there's Yimo, the Chunabu youth dedicated to being a bastard, naturally living it up and doing what bastards do. At this moment, on a street somewhere in the city, Jiang Yan, with no way out, dashes into a roadside alley. Just as she's catching her breath, she's surprised to discover a hand suddenly blocking her path. Little baby, let's see where you run now. But the next second, Gao Hui actually lies down and starts rolling around tantrum style. This scene directly stuns Jiang Yan, who says helplessly, "Stop following me, I won't join your guild." After speaking, she secretly takes out her phone to restore stamina with points, planning to sneak away while Gao Hui is having her tantrum. But just as she takes a step, she's lifted up from behind by Gao Hui. "You're not going anywhere, you must join my guild." Is this how President Gao Hui recruits members? As time passes, 24 hours have already gone by. City number 08 is about to welcome the start of a new round of game missions. As the dice falls, the number is 3, representing that the chess piece of city number 08 will move forward 3 positions. The position reached this time clearly shows a small cannon symbol. The cannon tower map will be executed as a cooperation mission. Everyone can't help but wonder, is it cooperation? Does this mean the citizens will unite again to complete the mission? Kuilai is also confused about this, and immediately flips through the magic book. At this time, another system pop-up appears, will randomly summon 1 to 3 chess pieces to participate in City number 8's cooperation mission. Obviously, the suddenly appearing number 17 chess piece is the summoned cooperation partner. But what surprises everyone is that the city on the number 17 chess piece doesn't seem to belong to any city on Earth. Meanwhile, on a castle of the number 17 chess piece, a figure is also gazing at them. Just this, such a small cannon is really cute, but Quan Yong's face is full of solemnity. Since 2 cities are participating in cooperation, the mission difficulty is determined by the sum of points rolled by both players. Unfortunately, the sum of the 2 6-sided dice is 11. The next second, the small cannon on the platform actually starts rotating, accompanied by violent vibrations from mechanical operation. In an instant, a 100-meter-high steel cannon tower appears between the 2 cities. So in the next 7 days, their mission is to conquer this 100-meter-high, 11-story cannon tower. The cannon tower will randomly attack one of the cities at intervals. Xue nearby quickly reminds her not to fight it head-on. After all, these 100-pound iron lumps crashing down with speed is no joke, and there are so many of them. Just this one round of artillery fire causes devastating damage to many buildings in the city. Fortunately, the residents inside had already evacuated, so no major casualties occurred. Just as Gao Hui and Xuan are feeling relieved about this, Zhang Bing has a different view. Did you forget? This game isn't about protecting citizens at all, it's about protecting the city. City durability, 91.6%. That's right, no matter how many citizens survive, once the city is completely destroyed, it means they've lost this mission. And the number 08 chess piece will be completely erased by the player. At this moment, the cannon tower has launched an attack on the number 17 chess piece. But strangely, not a single person from the city comes out to block it, and there aren't even any defensive fortifications built on the streets. But in a certain farmhouse in this city, a couple is kneeling devoutly before this emblem, chanting under their breath, while making strange hand seals. Could this be their mysterious means of resisting attacks? Meanwhile, 10,000 meters above city number 17, a phantom is slowly forming. It seems the entire city's sky is covered by a protective barrier. After a round of bombardment, city number 17's durability is still as high as 99%. Seeing this scene, platoon leader Jin's face shows no surprise, because the card that just entered city number 17, he already learned about from city number 4's logs. On the other side, witnessing all this, Kuilai also shows an amused expression. It seems that city number 17 has quite a deep background, actually able to get players to intervene and eliminate disasters for them. Actually, in this game, players can intervene through 2 props, cards, and dice. At this moment, the cannons on the tower's 11th floor have once again aimed at city number 08. But time has started a 60-minute countdown. It's probably the tower's cooldown time. Taking advantage of this interval, the military has taken action. But as soon as the vehicles enter the cannon tower map area, they immediately realize the danger, because several small cannon towers slowly rise in the originally empty area. In the emergency, Quan Yang decisively orders the convoy to continue advancing. The soldiers are all brave and fearless, but they still lose 2 military trucks. Fortunately, there are no casualties and they've all found good cover. Quan Yang continues to command the vehicles toward the cannon tower. He must complete this reconnaissance mission, so headquarters can formulate a response plan. Suddenly, an unexpected figure appears, driving alongside their vehicle. The 3 cannons that suddenly fire confuse Quan Yang. Is it that the 3 cannons have different cooldown times, or does it mean Yimo and his group have already rushed to the top of the cannon tower? Suddenly a figure jumps out from the side, immediately alerting Quan Yang. But this person acts familiar, speaking first. From your clothing and the city's appearance, you should be the legendary first generation, right? However, his words directly confuse Quan Yang. What does this person mean by first generation? But before Quan Yang can ask his doubts, this person has already extended his hand in self-introduction. He represents the Lexus family, an envoy who came to form an alliance with city number 08. And to demonstrate their strength, he reveals an astounding piece of information. Their city is a holy city that has been accepting divine summons and protection for 150 years.